regulations of the Senate for the second session of the year 2023 to provide for morning sittings on Wednesdays pursuant to Standing Orders number 34. The Chairperson Select Committee on Matters Delegated Legislation will be moving a motion on the adoption of the report of the committee on its consideration of the statutory instruments exemption from the expiry of regulations of 2022. Thereafter, the House will be moving into the Committee of the Whole, where senators will be considering the Parliamentary Powers and Privileges Amendment Bill, this being Bill number 5 of the year 2022 by Senator Danson Mungatana. The House is also set to consider the Prompt Payment Bill, Bill number 8 of the year 2022 by Senator Mariam Sheikh Omar, and so is the County Licensing Uniform Procedures Bill, Bill number 9 of the year 2022. Pursuant to Standing Orders of the House, number 53, subsection 1, senators will be seeking statements before various standing committees of the House. The Senator for West Pokot County, Senator Julius Murgo, will be seeking a statement from the Standing Committee on Matters Land, Environment and Natural Resources, and his statement is in regards to the grabbing of land belonging to Karanyarkwat Group Ranch in West Pokot County. The Senator for Kisumu County, Senator Tom Ojenda, will be seeking a statement from the Standing Committee on Matters Health concerning the poor state of delivery of health services in Kisumu County. The Senator for Vihiga County, Senator Godfrey Osotsi, will be seeking a statement from the Standing Committee on Matters Land, Environment and Natural Resources regarding the status of degazettement of Kibiri Forest and settlement of Shiru or Shaviringa settlement scheme. The nominated senator, Senator Crystal Asige, will be seeking a statement from the Standing Committee on Matters Labor and Social Welfare regarding to the inaccurate data of persons with disability as reflected in the national census of the year 2019. Senator Beatrice Ogola will be seeking a statement from the Standing Committee on Matters Environment and Natural Resources regarding the status of the Ruma Kodera Forest in Homa Bay County. A total of 5 reports from the Auditor General will be tabled before the floor of the Senate this afternoon, and these particular reports on matters audit are in regards to how the counties of Kajiado as well as Bomet counties utilize their funds allocated to them to the financial year ending June 30th, 2022. The Senator for Nandi County, Senator Samson Cherargei, will be presenting a petition or petitioning the Senate on behalf of Mrs. Zipporah S.K. Seroni concerning mistreatment, matters harassment, and property loss, as well as human rights violation meted on the family of the late Honorable Jeanne Marie Saronei. Similarly, Senator Samson Cherargei will be moving a motion on the doping menace threatening Kenya's impeccable global reputation in athletes. And in this particular motion, he seeks to have a person handling athletes vetted. The Deputy Speaker of the Senate, Honorable Kathure Murungi, is in the chambers this afternoon. I now hand over for the live broadcast of this particular live proceedings. Enjoy your viewing.
Let's pray. Almighty God, we beseech you to build with your abundant favor and blessings as your servants, whom you have been pleased to call to leadership positions in this republic. We seek guidance to treat and consider all matters that shall come under the revelation in so just and faithful a manner as to advance the peace, prosperity, and welfare of our country and of those interests you have committed to our church. Amen. Sergeant at Arms, I can see the clerk has established that you have no quorum. Ring the bell for quorum bell for 5 minutes.
The Deputy Speaker of the Senate has directed the Sergeant at Arms to ring the quorum bell for 5 minutes, and this is pursuant to the directives as well as powers given to him by the House standing orders that guides the House on matters quorum of the House. As it stands, the Senate doesn't have the requisite number to commence business this afternoon, and so that particular bell you're hearing on your end is to allow more senators to access the chamber this afternoon, to allow senators consider the agenda before the House this afternoon. The Employment Amendment Bill, Bill number 11 of the year 2022, is a bill currently at the second stage. The Agricultural and Livestock Extension Services Bill, bill by nominated Senator Maureen Tabitha Mutinda, Bill number 12 of the year 2022, is another bill currently at the second stage, and so is the Tea Amendment Bill, Bill number 1 of the year 2023 by Senator Wakili Hilary Sigei. The Senate will also be considering the Konza Technopolis Bill, Bill number 2 of the year 2023. These particular bills are currently at the second stage, where senators will be debating proposals in the amendments bills. The compensation of Kenyan victims in the 1998 bombing of the United States Embassy in Nairobi County is a motion by Senator for Machakos County, Senator Agnes Kavindu Mudhama. And in this particular motion, the Senator for Machakos County seeks to have the Senate resolve that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs advances friendship and cooperation between the United States and Kenya by supporting the eligibility of Kenyan as well as American victims and their personal representatives, surviving spouses, as well as next of kin in the victims' compensation funds. And this is pursuant to the Justice of the United States Victim of State-Sponsored Terrorism Act, as well as partners with the Ministry of Health to explore subsidized medical treatment for the surviving victims of the bomb blast. This will be resumption of this particular debate that was interrupted on Thursday, 16th of March. The year is 2023, and this particular motion has a balance of 2 hours.
Clerk.
Order number 1, administration of oath.
Next order.
Order number 2, communication from the chair. Any communication?
Next order.
Order number 3, messages.
Next order.
Order number 4, petitions. Okay.
There's a petition by Senator Samson Chelagay. That petition is defunct. Next order.
Order number 5, papers.
Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to lay the following papers on the table of the Senate today, Wednesday, the 29th of March, 2023. Number 1, report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of Kajiado County Executive for the year ended 30th June 2022. 2, report of the Auditor General on the financial statement of the Kajiado County Assembly for the year ended 30th June 2022. Report of the Auditor General on the financial statement of Kajiado County Assembly, Car Loan and Mortgage Fund for the year ended 30th June 2022. 4, report of the Auditor General on the financial statements of the Kajiado County Emergency Fund for the year ended 30th June 2022. Number 5, report of the Auditor General on the financial statement of the Bomet County Loan and Mortgage Scheme for the year ended 30th June 2022. Mr. Speaker, I beg to lay.
Okay, thank you. Next order.
Order number 6, notices of motion.
Next.
Order number 7, statements.
We have several statements. We start with one for understanding order 53-1 by the Senator for West Pokot County, Senator Julius Murgo. The next one is the statement stands defunct. Next is Senator Nandi County, Senator Samson Chelagay is also absent. Defunct. Statement defunct. The other one is Senator for Kisumu County, Senator Professor Tom Ojenda, still defunct. The next is from nominated Senator Christo Asige. A statement stands defunct. The next one by nominated Senator Beatrice Ogola. Are you Beatrice Ogola, Senator? Okay, proceed and lean on behalf.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I stand to seek for this statement on behalf of nominated Senator Beatrice Ogola for County of Kisumu on the status of Ruma and Kodera Forest in Homa Bay County. Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 53A to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Land, Environment and Natural Resources regarding the status of Ruma and Kodera Forests in Homa Bay County. In the statement, the committee should, 1, apprise the Senate on the circumstances that led to the massive cut down of trees in the forests and state who approved the deforestation, and 2, state when reforestation is to commence in the 2 forests. That is the end of the statement, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Thank you. My screen, somebody to work on this screen. Do you have any member interested to make a comment? Yes, Senator Manzo Daniel.
Do it for the next one, Mr. Speaker. No, not this particular one.
The next statement is by Senator for Vihiga County, Senator Ngonfure Ososi.
Speaker, I wish to request for a statement on the status of the gazettement of Kibiri Forest and Settlement at Shiru Shaviringa Settlement Scheme. Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 53-1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Lands, Environment and Natural Resources regarding the status of the gazettement of Kibiri Forest and Settlement at Shiru Shaviringa Settlement Scheme. In the statement, the committee should, 1, cause an inquiry into the status of the government written assurance to Parliament via a letter dated 1st December 2021, which made an official commitment to resolve the long-standing issues of settlement of people residing in Shiru Shaviringa Settlement Scheme. 2, give reasons for the inordinate delay by the county government of Vihiga to petition Parliament on alteration of boundaries of Kakamega Forest to exclude Shiru and Shaviringa settlement schemes in light of the land exchange program which was initiated by the government in 1985 during the creation of the present-day Vihiga County headquarters and at Mbale. 3, apprise the Senate on the status of the boundary survey by the Kenya Forest Service and the relevant ministries, stating the amount of public funds budgeted for the survey exercise, giving the status of NEMA's environmental impact assessment, which was to be done concurrently with the survey exercise. 4, give the status of the ongoing exercise to fence Kakamega Forest, stating the forest cut line indicating whether the aforementioned scheme is within the cut line. 5, give reasons for the delay in the implementation of the presidential directive via the letter reference number OP/CAB/26/1/3A dated 1st April 2014, which directed the gazettement to be fast-tracked. 6, give reasons why the specific recommendation on this matter contained in the report of the inquiry into the illegal and irregular allocation of land, the famous Ndungu report, have not been implemented. And finally, Mr. Speaker, cause an inquiry into allegations that certain powerful individuals who benefited from the excision of the same section of the forest have been undermining efforts to finalize the issuance of titles to the bona fide beneficiaries. Mr. Speaker, I thank you.
Senator Ososi, you approached me to make a comment on your statement, and I can see Standing Order 53 is allowing me to give you 53-4, to give you some minutes at the discretion of the Speaker, to give you some minutes to make your comment, or any other senator interested to make the comment. So you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this is a very serious matter. And this is a situation where in the late 80s, when Vihiga district had been created, the government resettled people in the forest, the Kibiri forest, on an understanding that their lands were going to be taken over by government, and they were going to be compensated by being settled in the Kibiri forest. Mr. Speaker, several years later, these people don't have titles, and that place has not been degazetted as a settlement scheme. Mr. Speaker, I raised this matter in the National Assembly, in the 12th Parliament, and some progress was made. The government made a commitment to start the process of settling these people. Mr. Speaker, this process has stalled, and just about a month ago, these people invaded the office of the governor, where we also have the county referral hospital, and demanded that they were going to take back their lands. Because though the government took their lands, these people have not surrendered their titles. And therefore, government installations is hosted on private land. And Mr. Speaker, this matter has been on for years. A lot of intervention has been made by leaders in this area, but nothing is being done. And yet, at the moment, as we are speaking now, and I wish Honorable Khalware was here, the government is in the process of fencing Kakamega forest. So basically, to fence the forest, these people inside the forest. Mr. Speaker, in the Ndungu report, and even in the TJRC report, it was indicated very clearly that these people surrendered their lands, and the government had no reason to deny them land in the settlement scheme where the government took them. So, Mr. Speaker, I would direct that using your powers under Standing Order number 1, you direct that the committee responsible takes this matter seriously and gives it a priority, because now we are going to have a conflict. The conflict between these people who genuinely gave out their land and the government which has not surrendered their land to them. So, Mr. Speaker, I wish that this Senate helps me as a senator of Vihiga County to resolve this problem once and for all.
Thank you, Senator Sosi. Senator Manzo Daniel Kitonga.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this is a very, very serious matter. It's also a very emotive matter. As Honorable Sosi has stated, it was already before the National Assembly, in the 12th Parliament, and it has escalated over a long time. This particular case creates an exception, Mr. Speaker, because ordinarily now, Kenya and the whole world is protecting forests. And the distinction in this case is that the people around that area gave away their land, and they did not get anything back. And now that the place is being fenced, and there are being fenced inside, and that the place should have been gazetted for settlement, removed from the forest and allowed. Although now the practice is that really no forest should undergo through that procedure, because we need to conserve all the forests in the country, Mr. Speaker. We need to plant more trees. It's a call of the whole world, and is a matter which is very, very serious. So I really want to support Mr. Ososi, Honorable Ososi, Senator, and also say that forests really needs to be protected, even what remains after excision. And even these people who are being given this land, Mr. Speaker, they should also plant trees so that we leave the theme. And for the government to have reversed its decision, it's got to be fair to these people. What is impending, Mr. Speaker, is that these people are going to be removed from this land and is going to become afforested again. So I'm really pleading with the committee to move with speed so that, because it has been a long time promise of the government, that it can be fulfilled. Mr. Speaker, this has also happened into the other forests, and I believe where government had given a direction, after following all the procedures, then the direction should not be reversed by subsequent governments, because governments enjoy perpetual succession. But bearing in mind, Mr. Speaker, we must really conserve forests. We must avoid the so-called farming in forests, invading of forests, burning down of forests. Mr. Speaker, in Makueni, quite a number of people try to burn charcoal or burn the forest, and it has been very, very difficult for us. And not only in Makueni, I've seen it in many parts of the country, including the latest forest, which was burned recently on Monday in Kiambu, and it is a very sad situation. We should all conserve trees for the future of the nation and for the future of all of us. Mr. Speaker, I support.
Thank you. Senator William Kipkemoi-Kisan.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I also rise to support Honorable Sotsi, the statement by Honorable Sotsi. Honorable Speaker, in the 11th Parliament, I had a similar issue in Elgeyo-Marakwet County, Marakwet West, where 1994, when Marakwet District was carved out of Elgeyo-Marakwet County, there is a community that gave out its land, and it's similar to what has happened in Vihiga. And for those number of years, over 20, 25 years, the people of Vihiga who gave out the pieces of land so to create space for the district headquarters are still staying in the forest without title deed, Honorable Speaker. You know, Honorable Speaker, there are 7 areas, because I followed between 2013 2017, about 7 areas in the country that have a similar problem, and the issue is like at the cabinet. The cabinet have not sat to approve for the cassettlement. I know the issue is what Honorable Manso could be saying. The 2005 Forest Act, you know, like it's very difficult to do the cassettlement, but people have already given out the land. They have title deeds. They have not surrendered to the government. They are living in a land without title deeds. You know, it's a very difficult situation. So the committee needs to move with speed, and we resolve this thing once and for all, because some people fear that this might open up a Pandora box for others to decassette other forests. But this is something that was documented way early 90s, and some as late as late 80s. Because in Elgeyo-Marakwet County, Honorable Speaker, we have Kapsor District Headquarters for Marakwet West that people gave out land and they moved to an area called Chebara. And up to now, they don't have anything similar to what has happened in Vihiga. So I believe the committee needs to look at this thing holistically so that we come up with a solution to help our people once and for all, instead of people suffering and they had land that they gave willingly after negotiating with the government of that time. And you know, government is in perpetuity. The government of Moi then and the current government and even the past one is the same. So these are our people. We need to help our people to acquire relevant documents, and they should not be pushed out by KFS. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I support.
Thank you. Senator Onyonka Richard Momoima.
Mr. Speaker, thank you for giving me the opportunity to support my brother Osotsi for raising such a critical issue. Mr. Speaker, as you know that me and you and a few members who are in this house have been in this parliament for many years, and we are constantly discussing the issue of our land, the land question in Kenya. Mr. Speaker, I think it has come to the right time now. I think the Senate, I believe that if you look around on what is happening to our politics and the issues which are coming out and they're outstanding, Mr. Speaker, I think it's necessary now for us to look at the Ndungu report. It's okay for us to look at the Kiliku report. It's important for us to look at all the reports that have discussed and raised critical issues about the land question in Kenya. Mr. Speaker, leaving that alone, and I have to make my declaration here that I seem to have a matter which is affecting me personally, but is being handled by a governor in one of the counties in our republic. And what is happening now, Mr. Speaker, is that when a governor comes after the governor who was there before has left, that governor who comes in then changes the rules and sets up ad hoc committees, does not regard the law, and runs around all over the place trying to tell his people he's trying to reclaim land that was stolen by the grabbers. And yet in reality, Mr. Speaker, some of the residents on this land are actually very poor squatters who have lived on that land for more than 25 years. Some of this land was actually annexed and allocated fairly. Some of it has been actually grabbed, as the public is aware. And yet, I believe that our government hasn't been very clear on land policy, on land demarcation, on which land we must keep strictly for agricultural purposes and what needs to be kept strictly for development in terms of building infrastructure or building houses or building railways and all that. I think, Mr. Speaker, instead of us looking at this matter in a piecemeal manner, in other words, instead of us looking at the issue that Honorable Sosi has talked about, there could be one issue that I could bring from Kisii County, where I come from. You find Honorable Mtata is going to talk about land that has been grabbed from the airport of Busia. I really think that, and I'm happy that the majority leader is here. Mr. Majority Leader, I would like to make a very special request. If you can discuss with the President and ask him, we actually need a very special commission that would go through the Republic of Kenya and come up with the resolutions which are implementable, which will remove the amount of anger and the amount of conflict that exists in our country because of the land question. I believe that it is necessary for us to seriously look at this issue so that we can try and limit or reduce the amount of anger, desperation and frustration that many of our voters have, and make sure that we have a reasonable land policy so that if somebody wants to come to Kenya and be a squatter, Mr. Speaker, then this person can actually buy land without having any question about it. Mr. Speaker, finally, if you go to a country like Rwanda today, if you wanted to buy a piece of land, you can actually do it from Nairobi. You do it online. You check on the piece of land, they give you the land, they have a portal, you access, the pictures come on your phone, you go to the Attorney General's office, and he tells you whether you can buy that land or you cannot. Mr. Speaker, I don't understand why in Kenya we can't do that. And you know who set up the system in Rwanda? It is Kenyan surveyors and Kenyan engineers. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Senators, I want now to recognize the school visiting this Senate. Let alone I'll give two more senators to make comment on the same statement. I can see there is a lot of interest on this statement touching on land issues. Honorable Senators, you have visiting teachers and students from the Renana School in Nairobi County. In the public gallery, we have 86 Form 4 students accompanied by 3 teachers from the Renana School in Nairobi County who are in the Senate on an education tour. Honorable Senators, in our usual tradition of receiving and welcoming visitors to Parliament, I extend a warm welcome to them, and on behalf of the Senate and on my own behalf, wish them a fruitful visit. I thank you. Senator Mogeni Eric Okongo.
First, Mr. Speaker, allow me on behalf of the Senator for Nairobi, Senator Sifuna, to welcome students from Lenana School to the Senate. Mr. Speaker, in our days when we used to attend O levels and aspire to go to A levels, Lenana High School is one of the a school that used to attract a lot of interest from students, and only the ones who are top used to make it to Lenana. So I'm proud to today welcome students from Lenana High School, and I'm happy that they have shown keen interest to visit the Senate so that they can understand the operations of Parliament. Lenana School is a very promising school, and I have no doubt, Mr. Speaker, that perhaps in the midst of these students, in the years ahead, may arise a senator for Nairobi. So welcome to the Senate. Mr. Speaker, this issue that has been raised...
Senator Kongo Mugen, maybe let me get to know whether there are maybe other senators interested to welcome the students, and then I'll give you the opportunity to make your comments on the statement. Senators with Senator Mwaruma.
Mr. Speaker, on behalf of delegation of Nairobi, Senator Sifuna and Senator Tabitha Mutinda, allow me to join you in welcoming the students of Lenana School to the Senate, and Karen Nyamu too, the delegation for Nairobi, to welcome you to the Senate of Kenya. As you may be knowing, in Kenya we have a bicameral parliament where we have the Senate, where we are, and the other house is the National Assembly. And what we do basically is we protect devolution. And I would like to encourage you to work hard so that we find your way one time to the Senate of Kenya. Here we make laws, laws that govern our country, because for you to run a country, you require laws and policies. Feel welcomed, Lenana School. I know most people would want to come to Lenana School because it's one of the top schools. I had a standard 8 class student who wanted to really come to Lenana School, but he ended up in Maseno School this year from 1. So feel welcome and learn as much as you can. Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. There is also Senator Siengo Karunda Beth. Lenana School is a school that everybody would like to associate with. So I'll give us maybe 2 more senators.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Let me add my voice on welcoming Lenana School to this house. On behalf of the women, I know in these boys have mothers at home. I extend a warm welcome to the students and encourage them to set goals that they want to achieve in life, and more so, to be very ambitious. In this house, Mr. Speaker, sir, we are people who have excelled in different fields in life, and these students can also do so. They can excel and they can do very well. And there is a saying that goes that the young people are the leaders of tomorrow. They can start now and remain leaders throughout their lives. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I welcome them to the Senate.
Honorable Senators, I was to challenge you this afternoon whether Nombonde went to Lenana High School, but luckily I've got one senator for Homa Bay County, old boy of Lenana High School.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I join you and the House to welcome the second batch of students from Lenana School, also called Changes. These young men, once they complete school, they will be called Libons, because they will have been processed through one of the finest institutions of learning in this republic. Mr. Speaker, this House has never had a shortage of Libons. As I mentioned yesterday when I welcomed the batch that was here yesterday, the former Deputy Speaker of this House and the current Cabinet Secretary for Interior, Professor Kindiki, is a Libon, is an old boy of Lenana School. The current Governor of Nairobi, who has also been the Senator of Nairobi in this House, is a Changerian or a Libon. Mr. Speaker, yours truly is a Libon who was in James House in Block 5. And Mr. Speaker, Block 5 used to be a bit close to Riruta. So our hobby in the evenings was to go and grab some mutura from Riruta. But I am not encouraging the boys to do so, because if they do those kind of activities, they will end up becoming politicians like me, and they will come to this house. Mr. Speaker, I want to encourage the Libons that are in the gallery through you, that I hope that amongst them, I will get my lawyer in future. I hope that amongst them, I will get my doctor in future. Because, Mr. Speaker, I don't trust the doctors in this house to treat me, particularly Dr. Senator, the whip, the senator for Kakamega. I cannot trust him with an injection. And so, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Kajwang, you're out of order, total out of order. We will not discuss the conduct of the senator for Kakamega. At least if he could be here to defend himself, it would be better. But you want to attack him because he's not around. So please desist from that route. Actually, withdraw that statement that you can't trust him. You are on a national TV.
Mr. Speaker, with a lot of respect, I withdraw. I've spent the entire morning sitting next to the bullfighter, so I think he has infected me in a way. But I hope, I hope that the batch that is here will be our doctors in future, our lawyers, our engineers, our software engineers. They'll be the ones providing solutions to the challenges that this continent and this globe faces as far as climate change is concerned. They'll be the team that will take us to the metaverse. They'll be the team that will carry Elon Musk's ambition and the ambitions of other billionaires, that there could be life outside this planet and that we can explore and humanity can master the universe. Mr. Speaker, I want to encourage the boys from Lenana. The reason why it is called changes, it changes people. They come in as villagers, but after 4 years, they are refined gentlemen. I want to encourage them to change from villagers, not to think of themselves as Luos, Kikuyus, Kambas, because this is a national school that admits boys from all corners of the country, that after 4 years, let them see themselves as Kenyans. And Mr. Speaker, I cannot fail to say this. Lenana is a school that has produced men, real men, not those other men who toss up and down, real men. And that is why Lenana was the best school when it came to rugby, Mr. Speaker, until the schools from Western Kenya came along. And because of the diet that they are fed on, the schools in Western Kenya, they are eating cassavas and yams and such starchy things for breakfast, while at Lenana, they are eating Yorkshire pudding and such exotic things. That is the reason why rugby moved from Lenana School, from St. Mary's School, from Nairobi School. I went to Musingu, where Sifuna went, and went to a few other miscellaneous schools in Western Kenya on account of the diet that they undertake. Mr. Speaker, I finalize by marveling that in this house, in this parliament, Mr. Speaker, I have met alumni of very great schools, Alliance, Stare, I've met Bomerians, I've met people from Kotet, I've met people from all the choice schools, even people from Yale, like Senator Eddie Okech. I am yet to meet in the corridors of parliament, even though I meet a lot of them in the corridors of county assemblies. I am yet to meet someone from Nairobi School who has made it to parliament, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Nairobi School is our perennial rival, and on that account, there have been more senators, MPs, cabinet secretaries from Lenana School as compared to those from Nairobi School. Mr. Speaker, I welcome the boys and wish them success in the upcoming exams. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Kajwang, these miscellaneous schools also have brought the senators to this house. I think I'm one of those who went to the miscellaneous schools. But we thank God. Let us hear Senator Kenyuri Esther, who is closer to them age-wise.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also want to join my colleague senators in welcoming the students from Changes. Back in my days in high school, I was in the Kenya High School, alias the Bomerians. Those were our brother schools for a very long time until I came out here. So to the boys in Lenana School, you have a very golden opportunity. Kenya is a land of all possibilities, and you've been privileged to be in that good school that other people have not had the opportunity to. And remember, you've actually made it to this Senate, so it's gone down in history. So when you go out there, do not disappoint the rest. And I want to differ with my good Senator, Senator Kajwang from Homa Bay, on discouraging you from being politicians. Politics and political leadership needs a test of smart brains with clarity of mind, so that we also change how things are done in these platforms. So before you pursue your other ambitions, I also want to encourage you. I'm a young person like you are. I was in one of those privileged schools from a very humble background, but I've transited all the way to this national platform. So I want to encourage you that you have all the chances you do to explore your abilities and shine in this country, not only in your different careers that you want to take up, but also in political leadership. Education is the only other thing that makes all of us equal. So in this house, you can actually present your ideas so long as you sell your policies well to the people. So I want to discourage you from solely listening to what the good senator from Homa Bay is saying, that Kenya does not need more politicians. We need political leadership so that we sort out most of these challenges we are facing as a country. You're welcome. Thank you.
Senator Richard Onyonka.
Ndugu Speaker, ningependa kusema asante sana kwa kunipa hii nafasi ili nichangie hili jambo la kuwakaribisha wanafunzi wa shule ya upili ya Lenana. Vile nimesikia ndugu yangu Mheshimiwa Kajwang amesema, mimi nilikuwa na bahati, sikuenda Lenana, lakini nilikuwa na bahati kusoma na ndugu yake ambaye anaitwa Joe Koto Kajwang, ambaye tulisoma naye katika shule ya upili ya Kisii. Baada hapo nadhani tulikuja tukakutana chuo kikuu cha Nairobi, na hapo ndio tulikutana na nduguye mkubwa Kajwang senator na yeye pia. Kwa hivyo ingawa tulienda kwa zile mashule ambako hata ukitafuta kwa runinga hazipatikani, tulijaribu sana tukakuja mpaka tumefika hapa mahali tupo. Jambo la pili ningependa kumwambia Mheshimiwa Kajwang na hawa wanafunzi wako hapa, sababu nimelazimika kuzungumza kwa lugha ya Kiswahili ni kwa sababu ningependa kuwasihi nyinyi vijana wadogo kuwa lugha ya taifa ni muhimu. Na hii lugha ya taifa kokote ambako utakuwa unatembea nchini Kenya, hata kwa ulimwengu, mtu akikuuliza wewe unatoka wapi, unasema Kenya, jambo la kwanza nakuuliza ni habari gani? Kwa hivyo ningependa kuwasihi wale wanafunzi ambao wanasoma katika shule ya upili ya Lenana, shule yenu ina jina nzuri, shule yenu ina heshima, kuna viongozi wengi sana wamesoma kwa hiyo shule yenu. Kwa hivyo ningependa kuwasihi nyinyi muwe na heshima, muhakikishe kuwa mna nidhamu, muendelee kufanya vizuri, kwa sababu sasa mababa wenu hawana utajiri mwingi. Ukisoma sasa, ile akili ambayo unatoka kwa masomo ndio inakupa nafasi ukatembea ulimwengu. Nadhani mmenielewa, na ningependa kuwaambia kuwa ikiwezekana, angalia yale mawaidha ambayo tunatumia kwa hili jumba, standing orders, angalia katiba yetu, our constitution, ili muanze kujizoesha kujua ni lipi ambalo unataka kufanya ukitaka kuwa unatafuta kazi ya, kama ni kazi ya MCA ama unataka kuwa mbunge ama ukiwa seneta. Ndio ukifika hapa utapata kuwa unajua na unaelewa ni lipi ambapo tunafanya kwa hili jumba. Ningependa kuambia kuwa asante kwa kufika, na vile nimekaa hapa Mheshimiwa Kajwang amesema kuwa atanunulia soda kabla nyinyi hamjaondoka. Asante sana ndugu Speaker.
Senator Okech, are you saying you also at Lenana School?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I did not go to Lenana School, but I went to a very pretty good school.
and I went to Friends School Kamusinga in Bungoma, and I can see even the faces of the students there getting excited because Friends School is a very good school. You know, our motto was use common sense. And, you know, Kajwang has struggled so much, Senator Kajwang has struggled so much with his own conflicted self of why should he stay in politics or should he go back and practice law. And I can assure you that that's an issue of common sense. Common sense because Kajwang has been very consistent in advising Changerians who have been able to come to this house not to go to politics. What I wanted to tell my friends, I think that I'm also very close to you age-wise, and sometimes I do have the privilege to be also close with you in terms of just experiences. You know, I can hear some whispers behind me, but that's fine. What I wanted to tell you is that you don't forget where you have come from. I think sometimes when you are balkanized into a group of students from Lenana, sometimes you can forget your backgrounds. What makes you today is extremely the backgrounds that you come from. And if you look at your own individual backgrounds, you have got challenges and opportunities that you have faced in the past. And being in Lenana, therefore, means that your future is extremely important. And what I wanted to encourage you to do is that you don't arrive. Lenana is not the last place you want to go. The world should be your stage of play, but with regards to politics, I want to urge you to go and pursue all your dreams. Go and pursue your dreams and be whatever you want to be in this world. Be lawyers, be great doctors, be great engineers, but always remember that all those careers that we pursue them so that we can be able to contribute to the society. And the biggest contribution you can have in the society is contribution to have your seat where decisions about resources are made. And the decisions about resources are always made in politics. So politics is decisions about making resources that will affect you, your children in the future, your families you have left at home, and it's the best science you can ever have. So don't be lured by Senator Kajwang to forget politics. What is affecting this country is that sometimes politicians we have had bad manners, and what I will encourage you is that you groom good values, you have clear vision about your lives, so that when you become a politician, you become a politician who cares about their people truly. And as I leave you, Jomo Kenyatta said that responsibility of nation building, which is what you're going to be participating on in the future, is going to be given to reliable custodians with good values. Be that custodian wherever you'll go, and especially when you find yourself in politics. I thank you and wish you well as you visit with us. And in case Kajwang forgot his wallet, you can consult with me as a neighbor, and I'll be able to show that you get your soda as you go home. Thank you so much.
Honorable Senators, I would like to acknowledge the presence in the Speaker's Gallery this afternoon and a delegation from the British Army Unit Training Unit in Kenya, popularly known as BATUK. The delegation is undertaking a standard tour in the Senate. I request each member of the delegation to stand when called out so that we may be acknowledged in the Senate tradition. 1, Major David Kalawa. 2, Warrant Officer 2, Vesi George. 3, Sergeant Galang Sudesh. Corporal Vakasegu Una. Lance Corporal Parvis Robin. Lance Corporal Lamosa Daniel. Mrs. Eunice Kenywa, Mrs. Jane Oyugi, and the last but not the least, Mr. Brian Oche. Honorable Senators, in the usual tradition of receiving and welcoming visitors to Parliament, I extend a warm welcome to the delegation, and on behalf of the Senate and on my own behalf, wish them a fruitful visit. Thank you. Let me give the majority leader to welcome our visitors for 2-3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I join you in welcoming the visiting delegation from the British Army. Mr. Speaker, I am a big fan of the poetry works of Rudyard Kipling, and I love the way he refers to them as Tommies and bootnets. It's good to have them with us this afternoon, because I know members of the Foreign Relations, National Security and Foreign Relations Committee have gone on a long digging spree many a times this session and previously, Mr. Speaker, to ensure that we have a long-standing relationship between Kenya and the UK, with specific reference to the work that British Army do around the area of Nanyuki, Mr. Speaker, on this specific mission that brings this visiting delegation to this country, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if you have been a visitor to Nanyuki, I know you can't be because that's your home area. Therefore, on many occasions, either for one reason or the other, when you're not at home in Meru, you find your way to Nanyuki. But the likes of Senator Eddie Okech and the rest of us who come from the western side of the country, whenever we visit Nanyuki, Nanyuki is testament of the thriving town of Nanyuki, is testament of the good work that this organization continues to do, Mr. Speaker. It's built out of, many businesses have been built out of either trading or any forms of relationship that exist, Mr. Speaker, between the local community and the Batuk organization, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, to have them visit us is a great honor. I know, Mr. Speaker, for a fact that it hasn't been extremely rosy. Last few years, there have been difficulties and difficult conversations. As you would expect of any human relationship, Mr. Speaker, there are times where things arise, but the most important thing is how you're able to amicably resolve and ensure that the long-standing relationship that Kenya enjoys with the UK continues. I know that our colleagues in the National Assembly did a tremendous work in ensuring that before renewing, because this cooperation agreement is renewed, I think almost 3 or every 5 years. So there are certain terms and conditions that were put in place to ensure that you protect both the soldiers and the local community, so that any matters that had previously arisen, or based on the experience of the previous years, you're able to forestall and ensure that the soldiers that come to Kenya do enjoy their time. If you read, Mr. Speaker, the journals, and I'm a favorite at this, of many soldiers, they give testament of whatever they studied and their experience in Nanyuki and how it impacted on their, later on in their careers as soldiers and army men and women, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, this is a relationship that we need to guard jealously and ensure that it's mutually beneficial to both Kenya and the United Kingdom. Therefore, I do hope, Mr. Speaker, that in the duration of their stay, they will get to enjoy and learn all that there is to learn about this parliament. They have many other questions. They are always welcome to interact with members of parliament that are here, the senators that are here, and those that are of the National Assembly, so that they can have a fulfillment of what they sought to do when they set on their calendar and programs to visit Parliament of Kenya this afternoon, Mr. Speaker. So I join you on behalf of our colleagues and all senators in the House this afternoon to welcome them and wish them a fruitful stay. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Let us have the chairperson, Standing Committee on National Security and Foreign Relations. Yeah? Okay, Senator Lelegwe, Steve Lumbesi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I join you and the Majority Leader and the rest of my colleagues to welcome the British Training Unit officers to the Senate. Mr. Speaker, sir, the British Training Unit is also a unit that trains in Samburu, and I wish to thank them and appreciate their efforts in working with the communities in Samburu and making sure that the marginalized communities get services, and I appreciate the good services they are giving the people by providing them water, building schools, and also doing medical camps to offer services, medical services to those communities. And these communities have been forgotten a long time ago by governments of Kenya, and I thank them because they're really doing good work in the communities. One thing that I need to urge them is that when they do this corporate social responsibility, which they are doing in Samburu and other parts of Kenya, is they should make sure that they involve the communities and also the leadership in those regions. And I appreciate because they have been inviting the leadership of the counties they operate in, and when they are making their decisions, and I encourage them to be making such decisions so that we make sure that communities get services, and also they get humble time in doing their trainings in those regions. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. I had promised to give one more senator to make a comment on the statement by Senator Ososi. So let me keep my promise. Senator William Cheptumo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support the statement by the Senator Ososi on the issue of degazettement. Mr. Speaker, if you listen to all the members who spoke to this particular statement, it's like this is a challenge that is arising in almost every county. In fact, all the members who spoke to this statement have very specific issues and concerns in their counties. And Mr. Speaker, I would like to agree with the other members who say that I think there is need for the committee to look at this more holistically. I heard Honorable Onyonga requesting the Majority Leader to speak to the President about this issue. I think that is not the way to go. Mr. Speaker, the procedure normally is that these are matters that this House can take up, and in our counties, and they go to the ministries, the ministry in charge, then they do what we normally call the cabinet memoranda, then the cabinet approves, then it now comes to the House for adoption or for approval. So I want to agree, in Baringo, for example, Mr. Speaker, we have several schools and institutions which are actually built in those areas that are gazetted as forest areas. But practically speaking, Chair or Speaker, those are several acres of land, you know, in schools, in colleges, and so on. And that, yet when you go to the Ministry of Forestry, you discover they are actually gazetted forest areas. I think it is important that we really degazette these areas and be able to issue titles to these institutions. I think it is a critical issue which we need to do. So that, Mr. Speaker, some schools, for example, or colleges, occupy those areas. They have no title deeds, and all the time they receive threats from the Ministry of Forest and with the rangers and so on. It is high time, I think, we need, so that even when we talk about now building, putting up or planting 15 billion trees, we should be able to do so even in those schools, but not as gazetted areas or as gazetted forest. So, Mr. Speaker, I think it is important. Then the other aspect, Mr. Speaker, as I conclude, is there are areas which are not gazetted, which have been degazetted, given to institutions, and the original owners of those particular lands, Mr. Speaker, are not actually compensated. And the understanding between the government then and the occupants of those areas is to be given land elsewhere. And Mr. Speaker, those days it was interesting because you find a politician from a certain area given a list of people to be allocated land. And that MP or minister takes the whole portion of land given to those people. So I think, again, those people who have been promised to be given, to be compensated and given allocation of land, they are now all over the place, suffering in their homes and so on. The so-called right holders, Mr. Speaker. In a place like Baringo North, in Baringo County, Simo location, a lot of fellows were displaced. So I think I want to agree that there is need for the committee to, and I think I'm a member of this committee, Mr. Speaker, and we are going to really do a lot in terms of ensuring that we don't only look at Otsoti's situation, but also what's happening in the country, so that we bring an end to the suffering of people and institutions without title deeds for their institutions. So I support, Mr. Speaker.
Let us get the last statement from Senator Christo Asige.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am also joining the rest of the House in welcoming the delegations upstairs in the gallery. Though I wasn't a student, of course, at Lenana School, I did spend a lot of time studying in the UK, Bristol specifically, which is famous for its Harbourside, the St. Paul's Carnival, and, Mr. Speaker, it has very, very good beer. So I hope that the delegation who are here, as I did, find a home away from home in Kenya. Mr. Speaker, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 53.1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Labour and Social Welfare on claims of inaccurate data of persons with disabilities, PWDs, in official data collections efforts reflected in the National Census of 2019. In this statement, the committee should state the disability prevalence rate in Kenya, recorded in the last 4 years, disaggregating these figures into gender, age, type of disability, and county. State steps in place to ensure that all PWDs, including children under the age of 5, are properly accounted for in disability statistics and data collection efforts, tabling evidence of capitation released to the NCPWD to cater for this special interest group in the last 4 years. Shed light on allegations that 413,620 PWDs who are counted in the National Census of 2009 were not accounted for in the census of 2019, stating measures in place to improve the accuracy and comprehensiveness to improve disability statistics. State targeted interventions to improve the current tools in use and training accorded to all enumerators to ensure full inclusivity and accounting of physical, sensory, and neurodiverse disabilities, both visible and invisible. And lastly, state plans to engage public and key stakeholders towards State plans to engage the public and key stakeholders toward audit census tools for the comprehensiveness of questions, designs, and categorization of disability status. I thank you.
Thank you. I can see some requests here, but I don't know whether they are in support of this statement by Senator Asige. Those who are not interested on this particular one, maybe you can withdraw the cans. Senator Manzo Daniel. Very brief comments, just 2 minutes.
Yeah, brief. Yes, I arise to support that statement by a wonderful senator. I want to say that the place of people with a disability in this country has been left without proper legal structures at times, whether they fall under national or county, and it's really been hard. But what I want to ask the senators and members of parliament is to give them a special place. Like you see, part of my employees, I have taken 1 or 2 people with a disability. It's one way of helping them and encouraging them. I have an adult who looks like a 7-year-old man, but he's an adult who works for my office. And we really need to support the cause of the people with disability, make sure that the ones who are hidden in the villages are produced, are come out and are able to participate, are able to go to school. And I believe there's a wonderful senator who is very well learned and is able to become a senator. All these people have a chance and are very much able to do whatever a normal person can be able to do. So I support, and also Speaker, allow me to welcome the delegations and say that I went to Starehe Boys Center, where we were brought up by a British soldier, a former British soldier, who brought up 15,000 poor boys who are big-time people in the world today. And I was also privileged to have my fees paid by Princess Anne, the daughter of the Queen of England. I thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Senator Manzo. Senator Bugwa Mungai George.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise here to support the statement by Senator Sige. And on the onset, want to state that, Mr. Speaker, data is everything. And because of the inaccurate statistics for the persons with disabilities in this country, the resources allocated to that sector have been dwindling over the years, and we are unable to get the services which are enshrined in the constitutions for persons living with disabilities because of the inaccurate data. So, Mr. Speaker, I support so that this sector can get what is rightfully theirs. Thank you.
Senator Baz Sheikh Mohammed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I support the statement from Honorable Sige. Mr. Speaker, you know this well, this country, we have so many disabled, but however, services and all work given to them is not actually adequate, and most instances they have been neglected so much. It's a high time that this country should take serious and give a quota, as they have already inside the Constitution, that the disabled, actually disability is not the inability. That actually shows Honorable Sige is perfectly in this house as a representative of the disabled group, and you can see how she contributes every day, and it's very, very active, and I want to congratulate her on that. It's a high time that we need to give space, we need to support the disabled, that we need to give them enough resources, so at least they can be able to contribute in the national national required functions that they're able to do. I remember when I was back when I was a member of parliament, I built a school for the disabled, especially for the deaf. And I'm really impressed today. Those students actually doing a wonderful job. I was really impressed that they did very well. For the last 3 years, they did the KCC, and they're performing very well. I think only the thing is that we're not giving enough opportunity and resources to the disabled persons. I therefore support the statement, and I need to be serious on these things, and this country needs to be serious on the issues of disability. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. The last one, Senator Sengo Karunda Beth.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I rise also to support this statement by Senator Christo Asike, aka VIP. Actually, in this country, we really need to support people who are differently abled. And they also contributing to the building of the nation. We know they are differently abled. They are talented differently. they can serve the nation also in a unique way. So we need to support them at both levels, at the national government, the county governments, and if actually a fund could be put forward to support them differently. Yesterday, Mr. Speaker, sir, I just wanted to know, as the argument is going forward about CDF, about GAF for the women reps, and also the kitty for senators. Can we also have a kitty for people living with disability in this country? This will support and encourage many to take leadership at different levels. I support the statement, Mr. Speaker, sir. Thank you.
Senator Madago Jackson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support a statement sought by Senator Asike on the issues of persons with disability. Mr. Speaker, without proper data, it will be impossible for this country to be able to plan effectively for persons with disability. And Mr. Speaker, when you see statistics that are not consistent, it means even government interventions that are supposed to go towards supporting persons with disability in this country will be so inconsistent and doesn't make any meaningful progress, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I therefore rise to support the statement by Senator Asige that through the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, they need to supply proper data of persons with a disability. And Mr. Speaker, as I rise to support this statement, we also want to encourage families in this country, Mr. Speaker, who have persons living with disability or children with various disabilities, to make sure that those children are brought to the fore and are given opportunity to access education. We know in some cultures in this country that when people have children with disability, there's a tendency to hide those children, and probably that is also what would contribute to them not being counted during the census. But we want to urge Kenyans of all walks of life that having a child with disability does not mean that that child cannot make any meaningful contribution to this country. I can tell you, Mr. Speaker, having been a governor in Uasin Gishu County, we were able to recruit over 100 persons with disability. And I can tell you, amongst the best public servants we had are persons with disability. Mr. Speaker, if you visited the county government of Uasin Gishu in the executive, all our executive officers were being cleaned by deaf people. And I can tell you they were very effective and very efficient. As a nation, we need to properly plan for people with disability. And I want to reiterate here, Mr. Speaker, that there is need for compliance to the laws that have already been provided for. For example, Mr. Speaker, if you go to all government offices, accessibility to those offices are still a challenge. You therefore don't expect them to be able to seek services like other citizens with ease, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support this statement, and the committee should further probe on other funds that has been set aside for persons with disability, particularly funds that go through the offices program, Mr. Speaker, because sometimes they don't end up in the intended recipients. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support this statement. Thank you.
The last one from Senator Mwalumba Jones Mwashushe. Senator Mwaruma.
There's a problem, okay. Yeah, nashukuru Mheshimiwa Spika kwa kunipa hii fursa ili kuchangia taarifa ambayo imeletwa na Seneta mteule, Seneta Asige, kuhusu mambo ya watu wanaoishi na ulemavu. Katika taarifa yake amesema ya kwamba hakuna takwimu za kutosha za watu wanaoishi na ulemavu. Na vile wasemaji wamesema, waliotangulia kusema, wamesema kwamba bila takwimu ama data hatuwezi panga mambo ya walemavu. Na kusema ule kweli, Mheshimiwa Spika, Kenya tuko na shida ya kuangazia mambo ya watu wanaoishi na ulemavu. Leo tulikuwa katika kamati ya elimu tukitunga sheria ya disability bill, na tulikuwa tunahusisha wadau katika ile sheria, na tulipata mambo ya kushangaza sana ya kwamba kuna wanafunzi wengi ama wafanyikazi wengi katika mashule ambao hawajalipwa mishahara kwa miezi 9, 10 na zaidi. Mheshimiwa Spika, katika shule za wanaoishi na ulemavu zinahitaji walimu, lakini kando na walimu, Mheshimiwa Spika, wale wanahitajika ni wale caregivers ama watu ambao wataangalia wale watoto. Wengine wanahitaji kuoshwa, wengine wanahitaji kusukumwa sehemu moja hadi nyingine. Kwa hivyo tutaangalia hii taarifa kwa undani, na naomba kamati ya Labor na Social Welfare iangalie kwa undani, kwa sababu wakati wa bunge la 12 tulisukuma sana ile Ministry ya Labor na Social Welfare ipate kupata takwimu za kutosha na kuandikisha wale wote wanaoishi na ulemavu na kuhakikisha ya kwamba wameenda shuleni. Kwa hivyo Mheshimiwa Spika, nashukuru sana Senator Asige, na anafanya kazi nzuri ya kupigania wale wanaoishi na ulemavu Kenya. Tutangojea hiyo ripoti ambayo itakuja kutoka kwa hiyo kamati, na najua mambo ya walemavu yatazidi, lakini hasa katika kila kaunti tupate takwimu ama data ya kutosha ya wale ambao wanaishi na ulemavu, na zile pesa ambazo wanahitaji kupata kama kwa inua jamii wote wawe wanaweza kupata. Kwa hivyo nashukuru Mheshimiwa Asige, na asante Mheshimiwa Spika kwa hiyo nafasi.
Senator Sige, 2 minutes, country.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for this opportunity. I would like to also add my voice to the statement by the Honorable Senator Asige. Mr. Speaker, when we speak about the inaccuracy of the data about persons living with disability in this country, it is not only a matter of subject which speaks into the Social and Labor Committee. Mr. Speaker, the latest census that we had in this country has got a percentage of 2.2% of people living with disability. That translates to 0.9 million people. Failure to have an accurate data in itself, Mr. Speaker, affects the inability of the government of the day and any other government institution, whether at the county level or at the national level, to mainstream and operationalize the demands that persons living with disability are required. Mr. Speaker, in 2018, there is the Global Summit where the government of Kenya undertook to implement and mainstream services, rights and entitlements to persons with disability. And it is going to be very unfortunate because there is no way we can implement those commitments if we do not have the appropriate and accurate data on persons living with disability. I want to appreciate my colleague, Sister Senator Asige, for taking it up and also championing the rights of people living with disability. And in this case, I want to encourage the Labor Committee, whose responsibility this statement has been given, to ensure that it goes beyond just getting the data, but also going to confirm that that data is a representation of the people from the youngest to the person who is in their sunset years and they are disabled and they need the support of the government of the day. Mr. Speaker, I support and I thank the Honorable Senator Sige for the bold step that she took. Thank you.
Honorable Senators, the time allocated for statements is over. Actually, you are hinting into the other businesses time. So I kindly request the two senators who have put their requests maybe to take 1 minute each kindly. Senator Onyonka.
I would like to thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me the minute to speak. I am actually humbled to listen to what my brother Counsel and Madam Asige have raised about this matter. And I would like to raise this issue with the Labour Committee in this Senate to make sure that when they begin to pick views and they're beginning to engage, they involve as many of us as possible, because many of our counties, Mr. Speaker, don't have any data, information, and anything to do with people with disability until when the campaigns come. That's when we just call them and meet them around. I think we need to be more serious and let us take these challenges very deeply, because they're affecting our people. Thank you, Madam Asige, for being a very good example of somebody who's been nominated to represent that community. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Professor Kamal Jepkoech.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for allowing me the 1 or 2 minutes to add my voice to the statement that was raised by Senator Asike. I want to thank her for doing this. Mr. Speaker, it is true that data doesn't seem to be correct. Not just the data of the people with disabilities, but even children with disabilities. Mr. Speaker, there has to be a way in which we can know our children from when they are young. And as the committee looks at that, let them also look at our schools, because some schools register children one term, the next term they have new children, they don't have other children. I think this question is very important, because it's going to open our minds on which solutions we should really be dealing with, or how we are going to approach this. Because we also know, Mr. Speaker, that the issue of disability has been associated with witchcraft and has been associated with so many other things. The side that people are embarrassed, some children are being locked in rooms, some children are being closed. So looking for data is going to be a very challenging thing, but we want to look for ways in which we can get to know who actually our disabled children people are. Finally, Mr. Speaker, we need to actually ask ourselves, is this the responsibility of a mother who gave birth to a disabled child, or it should be the responsibility of a nation that receives tax? We need to see how we can move that burden away from the parents, because, Mr. Speaker, you realize that if you have 4 children and one of them is disabled, you'll spend 50% of your time with a disabled child and 50% for the other 3 children, which means there are many challenges. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
All the statements start committing to the relevant committees, standing committees of this House. Honorable Senators, in the public gallery, we have 97 students accompanied by 6 teachers from Mununga High School in Nakuru County, who are in the Senate on an education tour. Honorable Senators, in our ancient tradition of receiving and welcoming visitors to Parliament, I extend a warm welcome to them, and on behalf of the Senate and on my own behalf, wish them a fruitful visit. Thank you. Next order.
Order number 8, the Natural Resources Benefit Sharing Bill, Senate Bills number 6 of 2022, second reading division.
Yeah, the delegations are not enough. We don't have enough numbers to get this vote. So we defer that business. Then we go to the next order.
Order number 9, the County Vocational Education and Training Bill, Senate Bills number 3 of 2022, second reading.
Honorable Senators, we concluded debate on this motion, and now I call upon the mover to reply. Senator Kajwan Moses.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker,
and Senator, okay, you should know when to raise point of order. I think the Speaker Right Honorable Amason Kingi has given very clear directions on when to raise a point of order. A point of order is raised when another member is contributing to anything, not just any time you raise point of order. What is which chair standing order and what is out of order?
Speaker, I respect your guidance, but a point of order can be raised any time. Sometimes, even on the matter that I want to raise point of order on, Mr. Speaker,
Under which standing order?
Mr. Speaker, yesterday I was instructed by your chair.
By my chair?
Yes, by the chair, by the Speaker, that today, at the beginning of the business of this House, I was supposed to present evidence on the motion that I brought yesterday in this House with regards to the issue of national security in the country. And it is in our standing orders that for whichever names that a member of this House brings in any motion, there ought to be substantiated. And Mr. Speaker, that I thought would have been, when I didn't get any direction from your chair, I thought for the purposes of this House, as a House of Record, it would be important for me.
Let us give Senator Kajwang time to reply. Then I'll give you some time to substantiate the issues that I am directed. There are some issues that you want to be substantiated.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Kajwang, let us conclude with this motion first.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to reply, having moved the motion on the bill for the county vocational education and training, Mr. Speaker, I want to thank all my colleagues who have contributed to debate on this bill, from the leader of majority, who employed his institutional memory as a ranking member of the Finance Committee to tell the House the origins of this bill that we started processing in the last Parliament but was not successful, and so we decided to revive it in this House. Mr. Speaker, the leader of majority cited the conditional allocation of 40 million per county that this House has appropriated for a period of 3 years. And we had realized that counties were receiving that money, and yet we didn't have a very good framework that would separate village polytechnics and homecraft centers from the purview of the TVET authority. Mr. Speaker, several other members contributed to the debate on the bill. Senator Mungatana brought the attention of the mover to certain litigation that has been ongoing with regards to employees of these village polytechnics and vocational centers, some of whom are still in the payroll of the national government. And Mr. Speaker, that was a very good observation, because we must ensure that as we devolve this function fully, we must also look at the human resource, and we must also look at the financial resources. Mr. Speaker, Senator Ledamo Lekina talked about the recognition of prior learning, and that this bill must attempt to entrench that in law. Mr. Speaker, I'm happy that the National Qualifications Authority, together with the TVET Authority, already are in conversation to ensure that prior learning can be recognized, so that that Otieno, who is a very talented panel beater somewhere in California, in Nairobi, can be formalized. Mr. Speaker, I believe those who are talking about hustlers and those who really believed in the agenda of hustlers would be happy if we can bring these people into the formal economy. And that can be done through recognition of prior learning, so that our experienced and our expert painters, experienced and expert mechanics, experienced and expert masons who do not have any certification can be recognized on their prior experience, and that can now allow them to tap into jobs in county governments and jobs in the formal sector. Mr. Speaker, there were a lot of observations. The senator for Kiambu advised that we should not over-legislate for small businesses. Mr. Speaker, this legislation is to guide the establishment of vocational centers by county governments. There is still going to be space for private sector players. And Mr. Speaker, when it comes to vocational training, the private sector has played a very, very important role. It is not the intention of this bill to regulate every college or every apprentice operation or every training operation around the corner or every driving school. But Mr. Speaker, in as much as we want a thriving private sector within the vocational training space, there has to be quality, there has to be standards, there has to be regulation, and we must ensure that there is consumer protection. And that consumer protection is protection of the students and pupils from exploitation by the owners of those institutions, especially those that are private. Mr. Speaker, more than 10 senators spoke to this bill. And I want to commit to the House that I will look at the Hansard very, very carefully. I will also look at the report of the Education Committee very carefully. And once again, I want to thank members of the Education Committee. They've done an excellent job. They have already drafted proposed amendments. And Mr. Speaker, I agree largely with most of those amendments. I also agree with many of the submissions that were made by members on the floor of this House. We will very, very quickly ensure that the necessary amendments are processed and that this bill can leave this House. And Mr. Speaker, I know Senator Mungatana has beaten me to the position of having his bill being the first being processed by the Senate. It doesn't matter. His bill is extremely important. This is extremely important. We should be seen to be sending legislation to the National Assembly, legislation that goes beyond those that are prescribed in the Constitution, like DORA and CARA. And I want to encourage my colleagues with private members' bills also to follow suit so that we can flood the inbox of the National Assembly with legislation that is meant to make devolution work. Mr. Speaker, I beg to reply, and pursuant to Standing Order 66.3, I beg that the putting of the question be deferred to a later date. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, thank you. Permission granted. So we go to the next order. No, Senator Okech, where is he now to prosecute his matter? Senator Okech, you have the floor.
Thank you once again, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, yesterday I did bring a motion on under Standing Order number 37 on a matter of national importance, namely the deteriorating security situation in the country. And as I was moving my motion, Mr. Speaker, the Senator for Kakamega, Senator Boni Alwale, did question my evidence on a statement that I made in this House that some pronounced leaders of this country did make statements or pronouncements that was tantamount to inciting the public to the attacks that we saw in private property of President Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta and to the Prime Minister Raila Amolo Odinga's property called Spectre. And Mr. Speaker, the chair did direct that I substitute that statement, for which the chair did ask that today I bring evidence to the same effect. Mr. Speaker, I'm on a point of order. Mr. Speaker, the Evidence Act does require under Section 8 that if I'm in a court of law, then I provide an affidavit to the same. But in the spirit also of this House, I want to recognize that social media statements videos that are journalistic, as well as any publication that is journalistic, amounts to evidence. And Mr. Speaker, I'm going to table here an order from Office of the Director.
Allow him to table so that also
you respond what I've tabled. You don't just make noise.
If there is substance from the.
I am telling you what I'm tabling, my friend.
What is
Mr. Speaker, I'm on a point of order, Mr. Speaker. I haven't tabled anything. What is responding?
Just resume your seat, Senator.
It's becoming cantankerous.
Senator Okech, resume your seat.
I'm lecturing you because you are ignorant.
The point of order. Senator Okech, Senator Boni Karwari, Senator Okech, both of you should be ordering in this house. Please, Senator Okech.
Mr. Speaker, I rose on a point of order to draw your attention to the fact of the requirements of standing order number 105, responsibility for a statement of fact. That's a standing order upon which Eddie was challenged. So far, Senator Eddie has spent 5 minutes, almost close to 10, explaining absolutely nothing, Mr. Speaker. If you read the provisions of standing order number 105, there is no justification or there is no requirement upon the senator to give an explanation of anything. All Senator Eddie needs to do, Mr. Speaker, and you need to read 105 too, is to say, Mr. Speaker, I hereby table the evidence, lack of which he is supposed to withdraw. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I want you to guide this House properly, and it is important for the House to remember, because, Mr. Speaker, you didn't guide that yesterday the words of Senator Eddie Okech, Mr. Speaker, were that Mr. Rigathi Gachagua, together with Kimani Ichung'wah, who is a majority leader in the National Assembly, as well as Moses Kuria, who is a cabinet secretary, convened and made public pronouncements leading to these problems. They made public pronouncement to the extent then he was interrupted by a point of order. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, reading standing order number 105 too, can you guide that Senator Eddie Okech, without telling us long stories that are not useful at this point, can he table the evidence before us, Mr. Speaker?
Majority, and actually, that is what I was requesting him to do, to table the evidence. Then we assess whether your evidence is admissible. So that if it is not, you go ahead to withdraw. Or you go to look for evidence and give you more time.
Mr. Speaker, I have watched my friend Senator Arun Cheriot here tabling things, and he explains what the things is tabling, Mr. Speaker. I am tabling and I'm explaining what I'm tabling.
Can you table your evidence?
I talked about 3 issues that you cannot gag me just to table them without telling you what I'm tabling, Mr. Speaker.
Now,
okay?
Proceed and table the evidence.
Yeah, so I have to tell you what I'm tabling, my friend. Yeah, so, Mr. Speaker, the first evidence that I'm tabling, both in hard copy here, as well as in a flash disk of videos, Mr. Speaker, are pronouncements by Honorable Kimani Ichung'wah on 18th March 2023 at Kianyanga in Kirinyaga County. And I am also tabling here the pronouncement by Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua, stated that the government is a private company where, a number of them here on the 18th of February 2023 in Kericho County. And Mr. Speaker, I'm also tabling here statements by Honorable C.S. Moses Kuria on his Twitter handles, and there are a number of them, because I don't want to get majority whip worked up, because I think this evidence are actually bothering him. And because I said a number of leaders, Mr. Speaker, I'm also tabling here Honorable Dismas Baraza's statement on the same that led to this kind of attacks. And in all these statements, Mr. Speaker, I've also come there with the videos here that are also put on this statement. So if it pleases you, I'll table it, Mr. Speaker.
Table the evidence.
And the bone is, don't be worked up.
So
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
as we scrutinize your evidence, we continue with the business of the day. No, wait. Next order. I'll see you next time. I'll see you next time. No, at this point you cannot raise a point of order, kindly, Senator Medo. Next order.
Order number 10, motion, amendment of the Senate calendar for the second session.
Majority Leader, this is your motion. Amendment of the Senate calendar. It's like your mind was moved by the previous contributor was on the floor.
Mr. Speaker, this is a motion that, notwithstanding the resolution of the Senate on the approval of the Senate calendar made on 16 February 2023, and noting the resolutions of the Senate made on Thursday, 23rd of March 2023, on the fifth report of the Procedure and Rules Committee on the amendments to the standing orders of the Senate, and pursuant to Standing Order number 32-4, the Senate resolves to amend its calendar, regular sessions of the Senate of the second session 2023 to provide for morning sittings on Wednesday, pursuant to Standing Order number 34. Mr. Speaker, sir, this is not the first time that the Senate will be sitting on Wednesday mornings. You will recall, Mr. Speaker, that previously we've had sessions where on Wednesday morning the Senate met and transacted business. But over the course of time, when it became clearly evident, Mr. Speaker, that members were more keen on being before committees in the morning hours of Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, and sometimes even Fridays, then as a House we did resolve, Mr. Speaker, to have our sittings just be on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, from 2:30 to 6:30, unless the House is otherwise moved, Mr. Speaker. But since this House has now adopted, Mr. Speaker, the provisions of the Standing Order in agreement to what our Procedures and Rules Committee proposed before the House to provide for Cabinet Secretaries to appear before this House, Mr. Speaker, we want to propose additional time for the Senate to meet so that we do not interrupt the Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays 2:30, that is mostly otherwise filled up, Mr. Speaker, either considering motions on various issues that are topical to the country, or statements that are being brought by members, Mr. Speaker, or bills, such as the bills that you want to consider this afternoon, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, it is in good order that I requested the SPC, and they agreed with us, that we move this motion to allow that the Senate does meet every Wednesday, and the questions as provided for in the motion that we moved here, Mr. Speaker, to provide for different cabinet secretaries to be notified way advance of time, the questions that they shall be asked, so that members can show up in this House, Mr. Speaker, and we agree, depending on how the first 2 or 3 sessions will go, the length of time that you're going to spend, Mr. Speaker. These are things that we said that once we begin on the exercise, and depending on the interest of members and the questions and the issues that are arising from the constituents that we represent in this House, Mr. Speaker, we shall be able to determine how many, for example, cabinet secretaries we can have in a single Wednesday afternoon, and depending on the issues that have been brought before us. Mr. Speaker, Therefore, this is a fairly straightforward matter. I do not see why anybody, Mr. Speaker, for whatever reason, will have a problem with it. But of course, I do not want to preempt debate. I want to leave it to the wisdom of the House to either agree with us, either as proposed or together with an amendment, Mr. Speaker, so that this House can meet on Wednesday mornings and consider, Mr. Speaker, that there is business that is actually long-standing and pending. Part of what we could do, Mr. Speaker, and we will be suggesting this to the Senate Business Committee, is that if you look through our order paper, Mr. Speaker, this afternoon, there are almost 10 to 20 motions that have been proposed by various colleagues, which because of the nature of how we transact business in this House, unfortunately, we have not been able to consider them. Some of these motions have been on the order paper for almost 3 or 4 months, and it's not right, Mr. Speaker. Part of what we could do on those mornings of Wednesday, Mr. Speaker, if you find that we have met and we have concluded on the business and members are satisfied that the business that had been slated earlier, our Cabinet Secretary has responded sufficiently, or ask for additional time, Mr. Speaker, to find better answers to bring before the House, we could as well consider other long-standing businesses that are before the order paper, Mr. Speaker, so that we don't have this practice where colleagues are proposing motions. I don't believe it is out of idleness, Mr. Speaker, or just for want of to fill up the order paper that colleagues propose motions before us. Therefore, it's unfair that we have kept some of these motions on the order paper for more than a month or two, Mr. Speaker. So giving the Senate additional time to meet means actually we shall be able to transact more business, Mr. Speaker, as a House. Therefore, I want to request colleague senators to agree with this proposal so that you can quickly be able to conclude on this business and move on to additional business. Of course, Mr. Speaker, I do know, and I want to appreciate your guidance yesterday, Mr. Speaker, because there had been an erroneous interpretation that by Cabinet Secretaries appearing before this House, Mr. Speaker, in a gathering of the plenary, that they are not required to appear before the committees as expected by Article 153 of our Constitution. I appreciate, Mr. Speaker, that yesterday you gave clear guidelines that cabinet ministers will still appear before committees of Parliament, the committees of Senate, Mr. Speaker, to respond to other ordinary business that was pending or that will arise in the course of members of the various committees going about their duties, Mr. Speaker. That lays to rest that particular matter. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, given that this is a fairly straightforward matter, I do not intend to be long about it because I believe it's something that colleagues can read, understand, and appreciate it. With those very many remarks, Mr. Speaker, I beg to move and request that the Senator for Kakamega, the Dr. Boni Halwale, to second. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Boni Karwale.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise to second motion, this motion as moved. Mr. Speaker, it was Michael Kijana Wamalwa, the late Vice President of the Republic of Kenya, who, while speaking from this dispatch box, said, in politics, if it is possible, it's always good to let a good idea yield to a better idea. It is true, our old calendar has served us very well. It's been a good idea. But if we can allow it to yield to the new calendar as proposed by the leader of the majority, Mr. Speaker, it will be a better idea. Why? Only time is going to prove us right. Honorable members, in the good old days, when we were in the National Assembly, we had a session reserved for questions. And when we opened up Parliament to public transmission of proceedings, that became the most watched part of the proceedings of this House. I therefore want to confirm that Wednesday mornings will be the most popular day in the calendar of this House every week. And Senator Onyonga was there. He remembers when he was Assistant Minister, for Foreign Affairs, and I was Assistant Minister in charge of the East African Community. And by the way, Assistant Ministers of Mwai Kibaki were actually Deputy Ministers. I support this motion, I second this motion, and I want to appeal to members that there is so much value in one raising a question on gold mining in Kakamega directly to the minister in charge, and him not only responding, but opening an avenue for the senator of Migori, for example, to then ask a supplementary question about mining in Migori. This is the point. This is the point. And Mr. Speaker, because we want to ask for more and get more, the saying goes, to those who more is given, more is expected of them. And therefore, members, I want to appeal that again, the usual headache of quorum when we open session, let it not remove the wind from our sails. We should try and be here. And when I look, most of the members in this house, what is the median age here? The median age here could be around 41, 40, 41. Yeah, very young people. Why would you still be in bed at that time? I remember in the other parliament, when the senator of Meru was arguing his case, he used to say he starts functioning best at around 1 o'clock. The former senator of Meru.
Senator Mudhamia, who was in 1963.
No, I mean the second senator.
And Senator Mithika Linturi.
Yes, great.
Which one? Which is for the purpose of record, because I did not hear this.
I'm very specific and factual.
Kiraitu Murungi.
It was Senator Kiraitu Murungi who used to amuse us from this house that he starts functioning best at around 1 o'clock. So we don't have that problem anymore. Even me, who has more years than most of you, I am in the element of a bullfighter. Bullfighters, we start feeding our bulls at 4 a.m. in the morning. And after I finish feeding the bulls, I normally support my workers in milking my cows. I have got my favorite cow. It is called a tambo. A tambo likes it when I'm milking myself. So we are people who wake up early. Amida, you are killing me with your laughter. So, Mr. Speaker, sir. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, with those many words, I want to second that this motion becomes sees the day of the light. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Honorable Senators, I propose the question that notwithstanding the resolution of the Senate on the approved the Senate calendar amended on 16th February 2023, and noting the resolution of the Senate made on Thursday 23rd March 2023 on the 5th report of the Procedure and Rules Committee on the amendments of the standing orders of the Senate, and pursuant to standing order that 2.4, the Senate resolves to amend its calendar regular sessions of the Senate for the second session 2023 to provide for morning sittings on Wednesdays pursuant to standing order that 4. Senator Kibwana Ali Aminda, continue amusing the majority whip.
Asante Bwana Spika. No, na mimi nataka kuunga mkono tu upande majority leader akisema kuwa tunafaa kuendelea kufanya kazi. Kusema kweli, sisi wengine ni watu wa mkono, ni technical people na si watu wa siasa sana. Kwa hivyo tungetaka kweli, motions nyingi ziko kama Bwana Speaker, kuanzia wiki moja imepita, niko na statement yangu na niko na motion na mpaka sasa haijafika. Nimeona vitu vingi kweli havijakuwa sawa. kuna motion kama ya dada yetu Senator Gloria, na kusema kweli hii motion ni kitu ya maana sana ya wasichana wetu kuwa na hii mambo ya sanitary towels. Nimeona motion nyingine ya Senator Kavindu, mambo ya 1998 bombing compensation. Kwa hivyo naona kusema kweli kuna mambo mengi sana yamekaa na yamechelewa sana kwa sisi kuendelea na kazi zetu. Kwa hivyo hapo nitamunga bwana majority leader mkono kwa hii kazi tu, kusema kweli iweze kuendelea. Asante bwana Speaker.
Asante sana. Sasa tumsikize Seneta wa Baringo Kipkorir William Cheptumo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support this motion. Mr. Speaker, this motion is fairly straightforward actually. We've amended our standing orders already, and what we are doing is to facilitate the implementation of that amendment. Mr. Speaker, if you look at Article 97 of the Constitution, this House is to represent the counties and serve to protect the interests of the counties and their governments. Mr. Speaker, I agree we do so through the statements, but I think, Mr. Speaker, motions and the bills are equally critical in us as a House serving our counties. Mr. Speaker, I have two motions. I think they are before you for approval. And already one member has already spoken about another one. Shortly, Mr. Speaker, our order paper will be full of so many motions, and we are unable to deal with them, Mr. Speaker. So I support this, so that, Mr. Speaker, we are able to deal with these motions because we'll have more time. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, the issue of the cabinet secretaries appearing before this House is something that I cherish. Mr. Speaker, when I was supporting the amendment of our standing orders, I gave a practical example of what used to happen in the 10th Parliament when ministers used to appear before the plenary. And Mr. Speaker, this is important because these members will have a direct conversation on behalf of our people with the cabinet ministers. And Mr. Speaker, this will be one of the very exciting moments. I recall that time, Bonnie Kalwale, as I recall, we were together with him when he was Assistant Minister for Health, if I'm not wrong. I was deputizing the Minister for Justice. Mungatana, I think, was Deputy Minister in some ministry. And Mr. Speaker, I want just to tell my colleagues, you will see how exciting that moment will be, because it will be direct conversation with the ministers. And during that time, Mr. Speaker, I remember I helped a lot of colleagues in establishing courts in various parts of the country, including even where you come from, Mr. Speaker. So I really want to support this, and I think this is a motion that we need to approve it as quickly as possible, Mr. Speaker, so that then we move, so that we have our matters, we have more time to deal with the matters before the House. I support, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Kajwang Moses.
Mr. Speaker, this is a procedural motion, and the best practice for procedural motions usually is for the leader of majority to move and get a member of the other side to second, because I believe that this is a matter that was discussed in the Senate Business Committee. It is a matter that ideally should not be contentious. I know we have been consulting here on whether Standing Order 32 and Standing Order 34 have been violated by this move. And I know that my colleagues will be prosecuting that matter. But in our Senate, where we have spent more time fighting than finding common ground, Mr. Speaker, I want to encourage the majority leader that on such procedural matters that we can have some bipartisanship so that you can have both sides speaking to it. Mr. Speaker, the debate that prompted this amendment to the Senate calendar was rancorous and was contentious. We had our say, the majority had their way. And what we said about the intent of getting cabinet secretaries to this House, Mr. Speaker, has gone on record. It is in the Hansard, and I don't think this is a motion for us to speak to the issues that we already prosecuted while debating the report of the Rules and Procedure Committee. Mr. Speaker, this is quite unavoidable since last week that resolution was carried. But it's going to have some impact on some of the busy committees have scheduled their activities and meetings into the next quarter. And some of those are like the Public Accounts Committee that I chair, the Public Investments Committee, which has a fairly busy schedule. And so, Mr. Speaker, from time to time, we might be seeking the leave of the Speaker to have meetings even when the grilling of cabinet secretaries is going on. So, Speaker, last week, I saw something very interesting. The former Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Boris Johnson, was called before the Rules Committee of the House of Commons. And the Speaker, in a session that lasted 3 hours and 45 minutes, the former Prime Minister, a man who was extremely powerful, a man who was extremely pompous, was reduced to the level of a witness before a committee. And the interesting thing is that being a parliamentary system, the former Prime Minister was appearing before a committee of his peers in the Conservative Party and his other peers from Labour Party. We should know and we should institutionalize that being in the executive does not make you a special animal in this country. Mr. Speaker, we should encourage those people who have had the good favor and the privilege of serving this country in the executive. Yes, they've got access to resources, they've got access to decisions that can enrich, decisions that can impoverish, decisions that can change people's lives. They must remember that those functions that they exercise on behalf of the people of Kenya. And so, Speaker, every time we talk about the people of Kenya, we refer to Article 1 of the Constitution. And many a times I've heard people say that that right has been given to me by the Constitution. Mr. Speaker, there are countries without constitutions. The right is not given by the Constitution, the right is given by God. The Constitution is a mere record of that right and the social contract between the led and the leaders. Mr. Speaker, when the cabinet secretaries come to this House, I said it last week, that perhaps they will regret why they came here. Mr. Speaker, I've sat with many members across the divide when interrogating financial accounts from governors. And so, Speaker, when the Senate is on one side and the executive is on the other side, what I've seen is excellent bipartisanship. I want to encourage everyone in this House, when a cabinet secretary comes here, do not look at him as Kenya Kwanza, do not look at him as a man from your tribe, do not look at him as a friend of yours. Let the Senate be the Senate. And that is why in the editorial of yesterday's newspapers, Mr. Speaker, if you saw the editorial cartoon, parliamentary oversight was depicted as a corpse lying on a slab with many daggers on its back. Mr. Speaker, that tells you the mood of the public as far as the role of this parliament is concerned. Let us use this opportunity for us to rise above parochial and partisan interests. Let us use this opportunity to convince the nation that legislative oversight that was depicted as lying comatose on a slab has been revived, and that this Senate will be that house where, because we are fewer, we are able to make more meaningful questions, we are able to guide conversation, we are able to put the executive to task. Mr. Speaker, there have been many ways, avenues for policy positions to come to this House. Just last week, we approved the budget policy statement. Every year, the President is required to come to Parliament to make an exposition of public policy. And Mr. Speaker, the motion that follows a presidential address is that the Senate to register its thanks to the President for exposition of public policy contained in the presidential address. There has been no shortage of opportunities for public policy to be brought here. We are going to use this chamber, that is assuming no one goes to court and invalidates what we did last week. We are going to use this chamber. So Speaker, I'm not trying to threaten anybody, but it's going to be a torture chamber for those who have the habit of misusing the instruments of power that they wield. It will be an accountability chamber for those who think that they can hide in their ivory towers and run away from the public. It will be an accountability chamber for those who think that for a senator to see them, they must make an appointment 3 days or 4 days, and then they go there and they're kept waiting for 6 hours. We will meet here, Mr. Speaker, and we will ensure that we squeeze out of them the accountability that Kenyans expect, and we shall ensure that we are not going to have a rogue government that will be running this country from ivory towers, will be running this country from the executive. And some of them, Mr. Speaker, as you know, are people we competed against in the last elections. You work very hard to become a member of the Senate. The person you vanquished becomes a cabinet secretary, and then they're the ones who are lording it over you. You work very hard to become the senator for Meru, and then the person you vanquished becomes a CAS, Mr. Speaker. And then when it comes to order of precedence, the CAS is now more powerful than the senator who defeated him in the last elections. These are things we must fix, Mr. Speaker. And I want to encourage Senator Dr. Boni Khalwale. In the past parliament, he came up with an order of precedence bill. We must revive that order of precedence so that those people who are political losers out there, and they are still Kenyans, they can get other opportunities, but they cannot lord it over the people who have been selected by the public to represent them here. Mr. Speaker, my final concern, that this House must and can only admit a cabinet secretary who is appointed as per the Constitution and who has been vetted by the National Assembly as required by the Constitution. Let nobody bend the rules to bring in chief administrative secretaries and all sorts of characters to this House. Mr. Speaker, I am supporting this motion on the assumption that the Senate Business Committee has discussed and there has been unanimity on the matter. On that basis, I support.
Thank you, Senator Kajwang. Senator Sigei Wakiri, Ilali.
Thank you once again, Honorable Speaker. I want to support the motion moved by the Majority Leader in the context of the amendment of this House standing orders, not standing orders, but calendar, so that we facilitate the appearances of the cabinet secretaries on Wednesday morning in the sitting so that they answer to questions which honorable members have put forward regarding their respective ministries. I have listened through the comments and contribution by the Honorable Senator Kajwang, and I want to confirm to him that indeed the House Business Committee sat, debated on the issues, the pros and cons, and the reasons which were put forward as to why we need these cabinet secretaries to appear before this House. I am alive to the fact that this House also debated in the course of the motion to amend the standing orders. It was acrimonious, but at the end of the day, Mr. Speaker, this House is mandated to make sure that the people who've been given mandate as cabinet secretaries are responsible for what happens in their ministries. That responsibility, Honorable Speaker, can only be achieved when the said cabinet secretaries are called upon by the House to appear and respond substantively to the questions with which the honorable senators have asked. And these questions, Mr. Speaker, I am aware, are questions regarding the performance by those cabinet secretaries in their ministries on the roles which Kenyans expect them to do. Mr. Speaker, I am equally aware that there is an issue that was raised as regards the appearances by the cabinet secretaries in the House being non-members to this House, and I want to convince the members that that conversation, Mr. Speaker, was in the context of a misunderstanding of the persons who will be expected to appear before this House. And the order is, Mr. Speaker, as put clearly by the Honorable Senator Kajwang, that the only people who will appear in this House are the cabinet secretaries who are constitutionally appointed, vetted by the National Assembly, sworn into office, are the only ones who will appear here. We do not expect any other character, any other person other than a cabinet secretary to appear in this particular House. This House, under the Constitution, has got its membership established. That appearance cannot be construed as the person coming as a member of this House. It is a member who has been summoned to appear to answer to questions relevant to their delivery of services to the people of Kenya. Mr. Speaker, as I support this motion, I also want to encourage the members of this House to heed the provisions of those standing orders, so that we ensure that the questions that we put forward are questions that will support the performance of the House in its role in legislation, in oversight, and in ensuring that the people of Kenya are actually served by the people whom we have elevated to offices and are enjoying their offices courtesy of the taxpayers' money. The question time has already been specifically provided for. The kind of questions, how they are supposed to be put forward, and Mr. Speaker, the opportunity to grant members additional time for supplementary questions gives us an opportunity beyond the written question that has been sent to ensure that if the said cabinet secretary is not sufficiently responding to the question, the member will have that opportunity to do it. I want to encourage the members to seize the opportunity and make sure that we make the debate in the House, the performance of the cabinet secretaries, to be an opportunity for the people of Kenya to feel that this House indeed is doing the work of a Senate, an upper house, and also ensuring that service to the people are appropriately delivered. Mr. Speaker, I support.
Thank you. Honorable Senators, the evidence which was brought tabled by Honorable Senator Okech, Eddie, I will stand the evidence, I will look at it keenly and communicate at an appropriate time whether it satisfies the requirements of our standing orders. Therefore, that matter will not be revisited this afternoon. I'll take time to go through it. I'm now well versed with the issues that you released yesterday. So I'll take time to go through it and bring some report to this House. Let's proceed, Senator Okech. And
Mr. Speaker, thank you for giving me opportunity to contribute on this motion. The bullfighter, Senior Senator Boni Alwale, started by saying that if something is good and you can make it better, then make it better. But I also want to say that if something is really good, that it can stay good, make it just stay good. Because some of these motions that we seek to introduce in the House, Mr. Speaker, are forgetting the fundamental reasoning behind some of these standing orders. Standing order number 34, on the hours of meeting, Mr. Speaker, if you read standing order number 34, 5, says that a motion under paragraph 4 shall be moved at least 30 minutes before the time appointed of adjournment. No, if you start from 4, it says, notwithstanding paragraph 1 and 2, of Standing Order number 34, the Senate may resolve to extend its sitting time. May resolve, meaning that if there is indeed a substantive issue.
So I give you time to contribute to the debate.
Yes, I'm contributing to the debate.
I thought on another matter which is, can you be relevant?
No, I am not supporting the motion. Okay? The motion is forwarded by the majority. That's what we are discussing.
Yes.
Yes.
I give you time to contribute, to talk about Senator Mboni Karwale, others. Just be specific.
Mr. Speaker, maybe I think maybe you are still examining my evidence. You did not get my.
No, I'm not yet there with the evidence. I'll take time.
Because I think you did not get my opening formula. I was saying. I was saying that this motion attempts to actually change some of the some of the provisions of Standing Order number 34, for which they are already so good that I don't think that this House does need to have meeting hours added to such days as Wednesday. And I was trying to say that if there is actually a very serious issue that needs to be considered with extra hours or an extra sitting, our standing orders already provides for that. And that's why I was saying that the standing order number 34 is actually a very well laid out standing order, to the extent that the fears that the majority brings through this motion are already taken care of by this standing order. To the extent that if there is a motion, and we have seen this, Mr. Speaker, even at instances whereby we have got adjournment motions, and even any other motion, where using this standing order, you can actually extend the time of a sitting, or you can actually seek for a different sitting. That's why I was saying that this is already so good that there's no need of interfering with it. And the purpose for this, Mr. Speaker, is because the functionality of any House of Parliament is best done in committees. And I think that by design of committees, examination of issues is well catered for. Being able to interrogate matters is well catered for. And some of these committees that we have in this House, Mr. Speaker, are doing a better job in terms of our oversight role and any other role that we do. Today, Mr. Speaker, actually, my sister, Senator Tabitha, who is the vice chair of the Committee on Finance and Budget, spent almost 4 hours when we were dealing with matters of equalization fund, which is a serious fund that under Article 204 of the Constitution has not gone to counties. But at the same time, Senator Tabitha and myself, who are members of that committee, are in CPIC. And in CPIC, Mr. Speaker, today we also are examining very important issues with regards to investment of the water company in Kisii. The governor of Kisii had traveled all the way from Kisii and came to that committee, and we could not get even enough time to be able to serve in both committees. And if we try to attempt to take time out of committees and try to put it on this plenary, Mr. Speaker, I think that we will be losing the point of the functionality of this House. And this is one of those issues, fellow senators, that I want to urge us to not just be following our sides of the houses, that this is a majority issue or minority issue. This is one of the issues that, as my colleague Senator Kajwang had talked about, is a procedural issues. Procedural issues, for the time we have spent in this House, then become experiential issues. When we are making determination about this particular motion, let us make it based on the experiences that we have had, and let us make it on the basis that that experience already speaks to what we see as senators to be a formula that works in terms of effectiveness and efficiency on making sure that we are contributing to our function in this House. And for me, I want to urge you, and I want to urge us, that this is something that I don't support, and I hope we don't support, because we don't want to take time out of committees. And in as much as we've got important motions to do here, if you've got a motion that you really care about as Senator Gloria or any other senator's motion who might be sitting without getting attention, let's explore standing order number 34, 4, and 30, all the way to 5 and 6, so that you can be able to seek for a sitting that can allow that particular motion to be dealt with. That way, then we make this House more effective. With that, Mr. Speaker, I wish to oppose this motion and encourage my fellow senators to be experiential in making this particular determination to the effect of supporting or not supporting this motion. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Senator Danson Mungatana Buya.
Mr. Speaker, I stand to support the motion by the majority leader. Mr. Speaker, I wanted to state maybe just 2 points that my colleagues have maybe forgotten. But as I stand, Mr. Speaker, I want to associate myself with all those colleagues, honorable members who have spoken before me in support of this motion. Mr. Speaker, a lot of times we forget that cabinet secretaries are state officers. And Mr. Speaker, state officers are covered under Chapter 6 of the Constitution on integrity. Mr. Speaker, the problem with most of us is that when we speak about Chapter 6, we say it is the integrity chapter and we have never read it. But I want to encourage our colleagues here who are in doubt as to the utility of this particular motion, that it is an expression of Chapter 6 at its best on integrity and leadership. Article 73 of the Constitution, Mr. Speaker, requires that every member who is a state officer, every state officer, every person who has taken an oath, such as a cabinet secretary, are supposed to exercise the responsibility they have been given as a service to the people and not to rule over the people. Mr. Speaker, when those cabinet secretaries come here, it will be a good reminder to them that they are not supposed to rule over the people, Mr. Speaker. They are supposed to serve the people, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, we have had cabinet secretaries who forgot that even the appointing authorities, the deputy president, is senior to them. They have carried themselves, Mr. Speaker, in the immediate past administration in a manner that suggested that they are more superior than not only the ordinary citizens, the ordinary members of parliament, but even senior members of the executive, Mr. Speaker. These are the people, Mr. Speaker, that you cannot handle even in those committees, because in the committees, Mr. Speaker, they write letters, they come when they want, they do what they like, they have ignored summons. And Mr. Speaker, nothing has happened to them. It will not be the same here, Mr. Speaker, when we meet with them face to face in the plenary, in the glare of the eyes of Kenyan people. Mr. Speaker, it will remind the cabinet secretary that they took an oath to serve the people of this country. The cabinet secretaries of the past administrations will be watching and seeing what a cabinet secretary is supposed to do. Mr. Speaker, we will have cabinet secretaries who know the facts of their ministries, not those people who just depend on support staff for them to answer even small questions. We will have people who study the mandate of their ministries, who are able to answer questions, who are able to answer follow-up questions because they have studied their mandate and they are familiar with the outputs and the requirements of their departments which they have been appointed to head. Mr. Speaker, another reason why we should support this motion is that it is actuating the constitutional requirement under Article 35 that access to information held by the state must be granted to every citizen. And Mr. Speaker, Access to Information Act is there, but this will be the real access to information. Because when those state officers come here, Mr. Speaker, they will not plead that, they are being, this is secret information or what. All the information, all the questions that will be put before them, Mr. Speaker, they will be required to give proper and satisfactory answers. Mr. Speaker, this will be a place where Kenyans will be watching to see the ministers who are the cabinet secretary who deserve to hold those offices. This will be the area where even the appointing authority, His Excellency the President, he will be seeing who is the cabinet secretary who is ready to work as a servant to the people, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, this will be the place where all Kenyans, including the appointing authority, including fellow cabinet secretaries, will be watching to see who is sleeping on the job or who is always traveling abroad, never being able to know what is happening in his office, who is always in meetings that are otherwise other than, Mr. Speaker, the authority they have been given to serve. Mr. Speaker, thirdly, we have had cabinet secretaries, Mr. Speaker, who have been extremely busy doing personal businesses, Mr. Speaker, in the past. They have forgotten that the Constitution, Mr. Speaker, specifically forbids, and I want, if I can find that one quickly. Section, Article 77, Mr. Speaker, and I want to read. A full-time state officer shall not participate in any other gainful employment. Mr. Speaker, what we have had in the past is that cabinet secretaries have not spent time mastering the things that have given them that position, mastering the facts about their ministries. Mr. Speaker, cabinet secretaries have been totally dependent on the PSs. You go to their offices and all you hear is, have you asked the PS about this? Have you asked the PS, does the PS know about this? Why? Because they are directors of personal businesses. They are owners and partners of personal businesses. They have a lot of time, Mr. Speaker, spent doing their own things other than the thing that has given them that position. Mr. Speaker, I remember personally serving as an assistant minister in the office of the President. And there used to be a cabinet secretary, Mr. Speaker, who would be, Madam Speaker, who would be saying, there is this and this meeting, I'll be going to State House, so you chair those meetings, and I will come at around 5 to the office. Mr. Speaker, and that particular cabinet secretary, and he was later on fired, he would not be in the State House, Mr. Speaker. He would go to attend to his own meetings, to his own businesses. Of course, he became a very wealthy man at the end of the term. And Mr. Speaker, these are the people we want to just make sure they are not in public service. If people like those were being grilled as it should be, because in those days, Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, we used to cover for them. It was us assistant ministers who used to come and take the fire. But in this particular case, we have said cabinet secretaries are the ones who must come in person, Mr. Speaker. And so I want to urge all of us to take this opportunity and to attend, and Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, to be a bipartisan thing. There is no way that we shall support people here, even if we are in Kenya Kwanza and we are in UDA. People who come here and they show incompetence and preparedness, or they are asleep at their job, we shall crucify them in the floor of this Senate. Mr. Speaker, we are not going to joke with people who have been given responsibilities, and some of them, we competed with them and they lost, and they went to sit in the cabinet. Mr. Speaker, we shall not give them a time here to relax. They must prepare, they must know the duties, Mr. Speaker, that are involved in those jobs that they have been given. So, Madam Speaker, what is not in order?
Is the Honorable Senator Mungatana in order? Is the Honorable Senator Mungatana in order to make reference to crucifixion of cabinet secretaries who will come and appear before this House? The language used to crucify is not in order.
Senator Danson Mungatana, would you reconsider the use of language and words and their meaning, their ordinary meaning in English parlance?
Yes, Madam Speaker. In the good old school at Alliance High School, we used to have something called similes. And so maybe some of us never benefited. So, Mr. Speaker, I will excuse my senior colleague, my colleague.
Now, Akili, it appears you did not attend Alliance High School.
No, he didn't, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, let me just say, and I want not that we lose this point, Madam Speaker. We want serious people, really serious people to come into this House. Madam Speaker, I have had the fortune of interacting with the head of state, Madam Speaker. This is a very serious man. He knows his facts. When you question him about issues, in fact, even concerning your own county, he would be talking about facts and issues. Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, I pray that the people who will be coming before us will be prepared, because we are not going to joke around in these sessions. We want serious people, and I hope wherever they are listening, that we want them to be responsible for everything they are doing in the ministry. They will be responsible for the policy direction of the ministries and achieving the goals so that this country can go ahead, Madam Speaker. With those many remarks, Madam Speaker, I pray that we support this motion. And Madam Speaker, even Eddie, Senator Eddie, and he has gone out. Oh, he's still here. No, don't oppose. You cannot be the only person in Jerusalem who has not heard that everyone is supporting this motion. Madam Speaker, I beg that we support. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have finished speaking, Madam Speaker.
This finished speaking. Honorable Senators, I have communication from the chair on visiting teachers and students from Gateway Girls High School in Kiambu County. In the public gallery, we have 127 students accompanied by 6 teachers from Gateway Girls High School in Kiambu County who are in the Senate on an education tour. Honorable Speakers, in our usual tradition of receiving and welcoming visitors to Parliament, I extend a warm welcome to them on my own behalf and on behalf of the Senate, and wish them a very fruitful visit, and I thank you. Now to welcome the students and the teachers from Gateway Girls High School, I will request Honorable Senator Wamatinga to welcome them.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. On behalf of the senators, and in particular Senator of Kiambu, Karungo Thangwa, I take this opportunity to welcome the students of Gateway Secondary School to the Senate. Indeed, Senate is a house of all possibilities. I am aware that, and I'm sure that you learn a lot of things here. I would want to encourage you and tell you that you only need to focus on anything that you want to be. If you see some of us, like your Senator Karungo Thangwa and myself, sitting in the Senate, this is a country of possibilities, and I would want to tell you, you must dare dream big so that one day you can not only sit in this house, but maybe even hold the greatest office in this country. As you are aware, we are drawing a lot of motivation from the fact that the current president of this republic was a chicken seller who did believe in himself, and today he's the president. The deputy president of this country was a Mau Mau son, and he dared dream big and today he's the deputy president. You have all it takes to become what you want. Therefore, I want to encourage you, work tirelessly and know that this world is yours to conquer. Welcome. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Senator Catherine Muma, can you welcome the students?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to welcome our students who have come from Nyeri County and, is it? Oh, sorry, Kiambu County, my apologies. And to tell you that this is the place where we make the laws and guide policies in this nation. The role of Parliament, as you may have learned in history or in civics, is a very important role. The role politicians play in your lives is a very important role. So I am glad that your school saw it fit to bring you to come and witness and see what we are doing. And I sincerely hope some of you will grow and take an interest to come to this house to contribute to shaping the policies that will guide this nation. As students, you might have been told that politicians is a preserve of a few people. I want to disabuse you of that notion and to ask that each and every one of you, whether you plan to be in the private sector, whether you want to work in the public service, in the executive, must take a keen interest in politics and what happens in Parliament. Because what happens in Parliament shapes even what happens in your schools, shapes what happens in this country, is the reason why we might take seriously things like the right to health and the right to water. So as students, I am so glad you took an interest. I am so glad you are attentive. And I welcome you to watch even as we debate. I would want you to know that we traditionally debate, sometimes very emotionally, sometimes we look like we are speaking at each other, but we are a united Senate and we are working for this nation. I thank you. Karibuni sana.
The final welcoming remarks from Senator Medho.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, for giving me an opportunity to welcome our students, the girls from Gateway Girls High School. Madam Speaker, from the onset, I would want to say that I convey the warm welcome of the Senator of Kiambu, Senator Paul Karungo Thangwa, who has asked me to welcome the students from Kiambu. Senator Thangwa is out on official duty of the Senate, and he welcomes the girls. We all hope that they will have an opportunity to learn. My only word of encouragement, Madam Speaker, is that, and I have said this thing many, many times, Madam Speaker, that education is one very major gate to success and prosperity for all of us. Part of the reason why some of us have had an opportunity of coming and serving in such an august house as the Senate, Madam Speaker, is because we were given an opportunity to go to school, and we put a lot of effort when we were in school, and then we excelled when we were in school, both primary school, high school, and university. Finally, Madam Speaker, I would want to challenge the girls. I see that they come from a very prestigious institution of learning. Some of us never even got an opportunity to attend such prestigious institutions of learning. We have had many senators who come here and they take a lot of pride having attended national schools. But even those of us who attended polling stations, schools that have been used as polling stations for a long time, we also made it and we came this far. So I challenge the girls from Gateway, go make your parents proud, Go make your school proud. Go make our country proud. We are looking forward to having some of you. And it is such a great encouragement to them that the person who is sitting on the chair of the speaker today is a woman. It's an encouragement that even our girls and women can go all the way up. We have very great women of very great substance. The lady who just spoke just before myself, Senator Catherine Muma, has been serving as the chairperson of the elections board of the ODM party. So women can go all the way up, ladies can go all the way up, and we celebrate them, we love them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Medho. I'll now invite Senator Olekina Ledama to contribute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise to oppose this motion for the following reasons. The first thing I want to note is that we are guided by the rule of law and the Constitution. Madam Speaker, I have no problem with the Senate amending its calendar. The biggest problem that I have is once we amend our calendar and we introduce strangers to sit on the floor of the House for us to be able to interrogate them, ask them questions. Madam Speaker, the biggest challenge that I had with us passing the motion of allowing cabinet secretaries or amending our standing orders to allow cabinet secretaries to sit on the floor of the House is because Article 153.3 of the Constitution is quite clear. Article 153.3 of the Constitution states clearly, and I quote, that a cabinet secretary shall attend before a committee of Parliament, either National Assembly or the Senate, to be able to respond to questions that might be asked. If you look at Article 153.4, Madam Speaker, each and every cabinet secretary is required by the law to provide regular updates to Parliament of matters within their docket. So, Madam Speaker, one of my biggest pet peeves is that should I be a legislator that come here to defend the rule of law, or should I be a legislator who comes here and rubber stamp on issues which cannot be able to withstand any form of litigation? Madam Speaker, the biggest challenge that I have, and I was waiting for the Secretariat to be able to demystify what it means by a cabinet secretary sitting here on this side. And yesterday when I was listening to the Speaker giving his communication, the Speaker, in fact, even assigned a seat for the cabinet secretary, where the cabinet secretary is going to be sitting. So he asked me. I went around the entire Narok County. I spent millions of shillings asking for votes to be able, and I was tasked with the duty to represent the people. I was given the privilege by the people to come and represent them here. Yet somebody who is appointed comes in and sit down when the Senate, when the Speaker is presiding over a house to be able to answer questions. I think it's about time, Madam Speaker, that we define our system of governance in this country. Are we a parliamentary system? Are we a presidential system? And or do we just have our own system, which we call it the Kenyan system? If so, we now go into the Constitution and amend the Constitution, taking into consideration what is required when it comes to amending the basic structure of the Constitution. Madam Speaker, if I sit here and approve and I say I support this motion, I'll be committing an offense. I'll be violating the Constitution. If the chair can tell me that on that specific day, when the cabinet secretary is seated here, the House is converted into a committee, I will have no beef. But as it is, this is a matter, when I sit here, I will be giving fodder for the people who will go to court, and they will say, Senator Olekina also sat there and supported an illegality. Madam Speaker, I think I want to be considered as having been different when it comes to the due process of the law. I want to be remembered in history as a person who stood firm and said no. The day we convert this house into a committee of the whole, by all means, any witness can come. The law is quite clear. Article 125 of the Constitution, our Parliamentary Powers and Privileges Act, Section 18 and Section 19, gives us the power to be able to summon or invite witnesses to be able to interrogate them and for them to be able to give us information that we need so that we can perform our task. So, Madam Speaker, without belaboring, I oppose this motion because, one, it goes against the basic structure of our Constitution. That is issue number one. Number two, Madam Speaker, I oppose this motion because it violates Article 153 of the Constitution of Kenya. If we're sitting here, Madam Speaker, and the Speaker is not seated there, and we turn the whole House into a committee of the whole, and there is no mess here, I can entertain having a stranger. Madam Speaker, my good friend, I saw him, the senator from Bungoma. The senator from Bungoma, when he was elected through a by-election, and he came to this house, but because he had not taken oath, he was sitting in the Speaker's gallery there as a guest. The only person who is allowed by law to sit on the floor of this house is an elected senator, and of course the Secretariat, who support us here, the Sergeant at Arms, and the Speaker, whom we elect to be able to refer yes. But any other person who sits there during plenary, it will be a violation of the Constitution of Kenya. And I do not want to be the first one or among the people who violate the Constitution of Kenya. I thank you, Madam Speaker, and I oppose.
Senator Esther Anyen Okenyuri.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to support this motion. In fact, it's very timely. As a young legislator, I now will be having time to take to account the respective cabinet secretaries on what they have budgeted for young people, women in this country, because they have budget lines that they have to state here. We will also have real-time answers. As it is now, chairs of committees can only report what the cabinet secretaries have written to them. And as we all know, they generally view the Senate as any other ordinary body they'll appear to. So at times they opt to just write very short responses, which you might have limited time to query. But in appearing in this house where every other senator is, then there will be more transparency, then there is time to even question on real time. They'll be going on Hansard, so they won't be just be mere pronouncements to suit the interest of few people. Madam Speaker, this is also a good opportunity, and I want to commend the President who, among the campaign promises he made, was to have cabinet secretaries appear in this house. That is quite progressive in promoting open governance. Young people from various parts of this country, women and any other ordinary citizens will have an opportunity to see if whoever is holding a particular docket is actually capturing their interests. Are they competent people? Just like Senator Mungatana said, you're not going to rely on shorthand notes given by technical persons. You should be having knowledge on your area of interest. So, Madam Speaker, such a motion I support in full, because like me, who took quite some time learning the ropes in this house, having been a late entrant, will have more time to also push my issues that are concerning young people, women, and generally disadvantaged persons in this country. So I support this motion, and I want to give, not a warning, but I want to alert the cabinet secretaries who will be responding here. Most of them have not been picking phone calls. I do not understand, because at times you're not calling them to ask for any favors, but in this house there'll be no chance of giving excuses that you're either out of the country. Once you appear here, we exhaust all our questions, you give your responses, you state what you've captured for the young people, for the women, and for any other special interest groups we have in this country. So I want to support this motion and urge my colleague, Senator Eddie. Eddie, you are a young person like me, and you need to support this because it will give Senator Eddie, you are a young person like I am, and I know the young people from Migori will be looking forward to seeing how you take to account the cabinet secretaries.
Just pause there, Senator Essie.
Okay.
What's your point of order, Senator Eddie?
Madam Speaker, is it in order?
And you cite the standing order you're relying on.
Yeah, Madam Speaker, you know, standing order number 121, 122, 2023 applies. Is it in order for Senator Essie to address Senator Eddie Okech in this house and not the chair? Because the standing orders are very clear that if you're going to address the house, they're addressed through the chair. And Madam Speaker, the reason why I'm raising this is very important. When we say we are going to have strangers in the house, and let's say a stranger addresses me the way AC addresses me, or the stranger is out of order, or the stranger that is called a CS abuses me, or the stranger does anything that is out of order, Madam Speaker, which standing order will you use to take a stranger out of this house, or to command the sergeant at arms to take action on any stranger? This is why we are saying that this is a very big problem, Madam Speaker, that we are entertaining.
Senator Eddie. Honorable Senator Eddie.
Yes, Madam Speaker.
Address Senator Eddie through.
And Senator Eddie, Madam Speaker, should also actually be very welcoming that I can actually recognize him as one of the few young senators we have in this house making meaningful contributions. So Senator Eddie, I want to implore you to support this move, because the good people of Migori County.
Address Senator Eddie through the chair.
Yes, Madam Chair, Madam Speaker, I would like to implore Senator Eddie to embrace this move, because the young people of Migori County are going to have an opportunity to also see how their good senator is getting real-time responses on their issues. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Senator Mwaruma Jones Moshoshe.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to oppose this motion that calls for changing of standing orders to include Wednesdays, number 1, as part of our calendar. Number 2, inviting cabinet secretaries to come and contribute or be part of this house. Madam Speaker, for starters, I want to recognize the fact that from my experience from the last parliament, it has been extremely difficult to get some of the CSs to come and answer to statements and petitions from members. However, Madam Speaker, because of that difficulty, we tried to amend this constitution through BBI, but it went the way it went. Now, Madam Speaker, what we're trying to do now is to amend the constitution through the back door, through amending the standing orders. Madam Speaker, being the lawyer you are, we are a presidential system and not a parliamentary system or a mongrel. In a presidential system, we are supposed to have parliamentarians, and the executive would serve as CSAs and the president. When we invite, and that has been alluded by the rest of the members who have contributed, Senator Eldama Olekina, Senator Eddie Okech, how would we be admitting cabinet secretaries into this house with the mess there? How would it look like? So I want to go on record that I wouldn't be one of the people to support this, because it is unconstitutional. It is an unconstitutional move. Thirdly, Madam Speaker, we have tried before to have sittings in the morning on Wednesdays
we have had quorum hitches until we decided let us have only 3 days in the week for our sittings. Number 3, Madam Speaker, we have only 3 days for committees to meet. In the committees, we process bills, we process petitions, we process statements. We have had problems of quorum in the committees because of the members belonging to 2, 3, 4 committees. And in the permutations and the combinations, we have had difficulties having quorum if the committees are standing or are sitting at the same time. What will happen now, Madam Speaker, if you're having only 2 days instead of the 3 days that instead of having, we only have 2 days instead of the 3 committee days, that is Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday mornings. Madam Speaker, when we have done our committees, we have had good sessions with cabinet secretaries, those who appear, and we have gone into the depth of the issues. Now, Madam Speaker, by reducing the time to 2 days, do you want to bite shallow and wide, or want to continue biting narrow and deep when we have just few members asking questions to cabinet secretaries? So I would oppose this move. I know because of the membership of the other side and the few members from this side that might support the unconstitutionality of this move, but I want to go on record that this issue or this amendment to the standing orders is something that is tantamount to trying to change the Constitution through the back door. The President, I know, wants the cabinet secretaries to come here, but then why can't he follow the Constitution and change the Constitution through the provisions that are there that allow us to change our Constitution? Madam Speaker, I oppose, and thank you for the opportunity.
Senator.
Kupata mtumaini Mungu kama sikiza tune yako, bonyeza *811 *815#.
Mtumaini Mwenyezi Mungu kwa moyo wako wote, wala usitegemee akili zako mwenyewe. Umtambue Mungu katika kila ufanyalo, naye atazinyosha njia zako. Usijione wewe mwenyewe kuwa mwenye hekima. Mche Mwenyezi Mungu na kujiepusha na uovu. Methali 3:5-7. Kumbe uovu huwajia wasiojiepusha na huo uovu. Tazama, unahitaji kufanya moja tu bila gharama.
Kupata mtumaini Mungu, bonyeza *811 *815#.
The Mozart Bait Cup enters the round of 16 on the 1st and 2nd of April 2023. 11 top-tier teams, 3 National Super League sides, and 2 from FKF Division 1 side meet in the Clash of Titans. 2009 KPL champions Sofapaka will square it out with Darajani Gogo of Kibera from 1 p.m. on Saturday, the 1st of April 2023, before Kenya Police lock horns with Ulinzi Stars in an all-forces derby at 3 p.m. at the Kenyatta Stadium in Machakos. On Sunday, the 2nd of April 2023, Kariobangi Sharks will be up against Equity from 1 p.m. as they pave way for the clash between Premier League sides KCB and Bidco United at 3 p.m. at the Kasarani Annex. Catch all the actions live and exclusive on KBC Channel 1. Who will be the 2023 undisputed champion of the Mozart Bait Cup and get the golden chance of representing Kenya in the CAF Confederation Cup tournament? KBC Channel 1, your true sports partner.
Stingray.